in time. Our first episode. Our first episode is scheduled for tomorrow. And actually, at this point, what I want to do is just get a sound check and make sure people can hear me.
Someone's saying that there's something wrong with the intro.
Yeah, I think it may be stuttering a bit. We've discussed that before. My mic levels are showing nothing, so I want to make sure that we got that.
Okay. Let me ask in chat if they can hear us.
Audio Jungle.
They also are a little bit behind us too.
Yes.
Audio Jungle.
Levels here suggest that the mic is
Audio Jungle.
Apparently, they're hearing Audio Jungle.
Oh yes, I know.
In other words, they're hearing.
It's the test. It's the test. It's the test layout. So let me. The test layout is supposed to be off.
Whoops.
Yeah. Since technically we're not even licensed for that. This wasn't supposed to go until. Okay, but it looks like they do hear us. This says I've got no audio level, but as long as they hear us. So as I was saying, that we still have some of the test graphics, obviously, on there. We do have breaking news graphics that are the live graphics that we had intended, but this is just was not the show we had intended. This program was supposed to air first tomorrow, and we're going to be discussing commentary on various political and social media issues, and we were also going to be covering breaking news. And then, of course, some breaking news happened today, and we decided that we were going to cover it. So that is what we are doing here. Now, I don't know a whole heck of a lot about it. What I do know so far is that at least six officers are shot in Philadelphia. And so Ansgar, I was hoping you could tell me a bit more about it.
Yes. First of all, by the way, my camera seems to be missing in the layout. But yes,
we'll work on that.
But while you do that, we'll work on that. Okay. So apparently, officers went to go. It was narcotics officers went to go serve a warrant. During that altercation, at some point, shots rang out. 6 officers were injured. The news that I have that I've been able to get a hold of says that none of the injuries are life-threatening. However, the situation isn't resolved. It's been almost 3 hours with shots continually ringing out, and the last update is that there are still 2 officers trapped in the home with the gunman.
Now, was there anyone else in the home at the time? Did anyone else get out? Do we know that?
Oh, yes, there were several residents who fled the home the moment that there was a shooting, and they have been interviewed by the police. They've been interviewed by the press. They actually have commended the officers and thanked them for saving their lives. They said at every point that the officers, in this situation at least, were nothing but concerned for the the civilian safety. And so all of them have gotten out completely unharmed. Apparently some bullets have made their way through the streets from the home, but none of those wild bullets have hit any of the bystanders or anything like that.
All right, and it's still an active situation, so there's still shots being exchanged?
Yes, there's still shots being exchanged right now. As I'm watching on my feed, the SWAT team are positioning. We don't know what they're doing, obviously, because they're not going to share their tactics over the media. But right now, that would be not intelligent. But the SWAT team are repositioning vehicles, and they want to get this resolved before nightfall because as far as they're concerned, once night comes, it creates a much worse tactical situation.
All right. Now, speaking of streaming their tactics, was some of this live streamed?
Yes. Apparently, the shooter was live streaming some of this to social media. At some point, the stream cut out. I'm not sure if I haven't gone to track down the stream, because the last thing I want to do is promote this shooter's live stream. But yes, the shooter actually live streamed whatever was going on. I'm assuming from his phone or something like that. And at some point, that stream was cut off. I don't know if it was by the police. You know, they've done that kind of thing before, or if he just decided to turn it off. But yes, he was live streaming the gunfight.
Okay. All right. So we had a request for a recap, and what we're gonna do is we're gonna actually hold up multiple sources that Ansgar and I are gonna be going over. We have actually multiple monitors here and several computers, and we're gonna be going over the various sources on this incident, and we're going to try to sort of see what's going on and how everyone's doing. As of this moment, there are no deaths, and I think it's hopeful that there aren't going to be any. There are 6 officers shot in Philadelphia and wounded. 2 more are currently trapped inside a house, or inside the house where the shootout erupted, and there's a standoff between officers and a suspect. They were serving a warrant on was it a drug violation of some kind?
Yes, that's what it seems like, because it was narcotics officers.
Okay, and now SWAT team, I guess, is there, and on top of all of that,
yes, they've been there for a while.
Okay.
Yeah, they've been there for a while, but they're just now starting to reposition.
Okay, and this is breaking news and commentary, and trying to, I think, give people an accurate story of what's going on was something that we here hoped to do, and we were going to really be prepared to start doing that tomorrow. We're doing this a day early, and so it's we're still, I guess, a little bit in the beta. We're having a little streaming troubles, I think, but overall we're doing all right. Ansgar's image, I actually see it on my end, but the frame seems to have locked up, and so I'm going to try to fix that so you can all see him. But in the meantime, we're gonna, so it's just the disembodied voice right now. We're gonna try to figure out a bit more about what's going on, and I think so. We've got CNN. There's a very nice image of CNN's what they're advertising on the center screen there. We may try to scroll through that. That's an interesting point about, so he live streamed it. I think I would like to find out a bit more about that live stream and find out what we know about it. I think you're right there.
I can go do some searching if you want me to.
Let's do that, and let's see if anybody else on the live chat has any questions, or if there's anything else that they know about it. In the meantime, I'm gonna do something absolutely atrocious, which is I'm also gonna check Fox News on this, and one of the reasons I like to try to get as good as much information from as many sources as possible, and I do think that Fox News is they're certainly not my go-to source on most things, but it is nice to see what it is that they have to say. So let me
Okay, the police did, by the way, shut down the live stream. They were the ones that shut it down.
They terminated it.
Yeah.
All right. Now, do you know, was that from his phone, or was he doing that from
right now, all it says is, let's see, the suspect in the wounded 6 officers live streaming the ongoing gun battle. was live streaming some of the shootout. Yeah, they haven't said exactly what. I'm still tracking that down.
All right. Let's see if we can get. Now we got. I'm gonna put up.
So he streamed it to Facebook. It seems like.
To Wow. Okay. Um. Yeah. That's an interesting. Okay. Let me try to get. I've got Fox News, and we're gonna bring them up. It looks like.
I have a still image.
All right. You can send that to me, and I can get that up here. What's that an image of?
This is an image because as you can imagine, the stream has been taken down, so it's almost impossible to even see. But this is a image from what he was live streaming.
Oh, okay. Yeah. Why don't if you can?
It's up to you if you want to put it up.
Yeah, I'm not sure if I want to put it up, but I would at a minimum like to see what it is. And then in the meantime, I would also like to see what Reuters or anyone else has to say about this. Like I said, we're still this is a day early, and we're not entirely prepared to start this right off the bat.
This is a new format, so yeah. Well, what I'm curious about though is, do you think that the ability to live stream something like this, the ability to go live and glorify yourself in such a way, is a factor in these kinds of things?
Well, I think that's a good question. I think, well, he was live streaming, so clearly he thought something was going to happen. I'd like to know the details of how and when he started streaming relative to when the warrant was actually being served, because ostensibly, I mean, you know, the warrant, you would think they would, you know, I would assume it would be a no-knock warrant. They just come in and burst into the house. So I have no idea how he actually starts streaming that. Now,
Yeah.
once he's streamed it, you obviously don't want to make him more famous for what's going on and for what he's doing. So I think there is some point to not showing any of the stream and not engaging on that. But on the well, yeah. So I think that's in general, but I don't know that it necessarily caused anything. I don't know. What are your thoughts?
Well, we know that radicalization is strongly tied to, you know, is definitely strongly tied to, you know, shootings in general, violence in general. And so I really do wonder if the ease of which one can feel that they have glorified themselves, the ease of which, you know, to have that kind of reach will make it, I don't know, almost like the decision easier for someone who's looking for that kind of thing.
That's a fair point. I think I mean, obviously, I mean, I would assume, and this is just pure speculation, we don't know much, but I would assume he probably sees himself as a victim. You know, he's a victim of the system, of the man, of whatever, and so he wants to stream, hey, these cops are busting into my house. Look what's happening. I do think I mean, I don't think he's an extremist. So I think, you know, you we're talking about extremism. I don't think he's an extremist, but I think it does apply in very much the same way. I don't think he's looking to send a message per se. Um, but I,
Not a necessarily. Well, I mean, it's possible. It could be a political message, but I wouldn't think that it would necessarily be tied to a violent extremist view. But one can take a violent extremist side of a rather normal political view. You know what I mean?
yep.
There's. I mean, pardon my French, but there's a reason. And people right now, in a lot of ways, feel kind of, fuck the police with the bad things going on. And so even this could simply be a more radicalized version of that thought process.
I think that's a fair point. Now the warrant, do you know if the warrant was included an arrest or was it just for like search and seizure? I mean, it was a drug warrant. I know we know that. Um,
Mm-hmm.
but I wonder if, and usually, in my experience, they try to serve warrants as early as possible. So now this must have not been served until the late afternoon, in part to try to catch people, before they either head off to work or, and also to avoid something like this going off into the night. So I'm curious. It may have been like an emergency warrant, or it's odd for them. Usually warrants are done first thing in the morning. They go through a whole thing of warrants, try to be done by 11 a.m. and leave it at that, unless this police department's doing something different than how I understand things usually to be done.
Well, in this case, what happened, as far as I was reading and listening to some of the news, is they had actually cased the place out for at least a couple days to make sure that the person that they wanted was going to be home when they got there. So in that kind of a situation, where they're actually casing and making sure, and we're talking about several officers going to do to make to serve this warrant. This sounds like they were prepared for potential violence or pushback. They don't typically burst in your door with several officers, or even knock with a bunch of officers when it's just a, hey, we need you to go to court or we need you to testify kind of warrant.
Yeah,
It
but
sounds to me like this may have been an arrest warrant.
yeah, it was definitely well, it was, so at a minimum it must have been a search and seizure, and the question was it an arrest warrant, and the other question is, of course, how much warning
Yeah.
did he have? All right, so again, this is our first time. We have a show planned for tomorrow. Tomorrow is still, and we still have it. Tomorrow's our official start. We're going to be using legit and legal graphics tomorrow. At least that's the idea. And yeah, wouldn't that be a bonus? Let's try not to get demonetized on our first day out and get a copyright deal against us. But now the other thing is, I'm curious if I'm gonna try talking to, because one of the things was I was actually testing the interface, and we've got the CNN up on the interface, and then CNN just came up blinking, and I was just like, oh, breaking news. Gee, as of tomorrow, we're going to be covering that. And I was like, well, we could do something really stupid to try to cover it now. So we are going to, now somebody here said something, we live in a privatized police state in this country. I'd really like to understand a bit more about what he means by that. I've heard that opinion before, and I think that's a worthwhile opinion to discuss, but I'm curious
I don't know about privatized. I mean, it seems weird to call it privatized, though I will say that there is a certain amount of adversarialness that I see in police work these days, if that makes sense.
That does, yes.
Just as an example, in the LA area, all the cars used to even say to protect and serve. And when I was growing up, I was always told that police are supposed to be, public servants. That's what their job is. But it seems more and more, and it was probably already like this to a degree, that the law enforcement seems to be their primary goal, not necessarily protecting and serving. However, we do have to remark that according to the people that were in the house, that is exactly what these officers did, was put their lives in the line for the civilians that were there. So,
And I think, yeah, and that's one of the things
it's hard to make such a blanket. Yeah.
No, that's one of the things
Go
that
ahead.
you had pointed out immediately, even before this question had been asked, and you had said, well, hey, look, this is what we're being told, is that the people were very thankful for the way that the police officers got them out, and 6 officers shot. That doesn't usually happen on a warrant, so it seems to me that there were some sort of extenuating circumstances, and it may be that he was taking, yeah, it may be that he was taking shots at them while. It may be that he was taking shots at them while they were trying to get people into cover. I mean, that's when I see 6 officers shot, that's usually the thing I think of, is they weren't preoccupied with their own safety or necessarily getting him, because if they were, he'd be dead by now, and there'd be 1, 2 officers shot most. This does bring up, this gets into 2 things that I would love to discuss at some point.
Some updates.
Okay.
I was going to say some updates. David McInnes also brought this up. The police have been trying to get the public to back off, and no one will, which means there's a lot of bystanders still in the line of fire at this moment. And one of the updates is that one of the 6 officers that's been shot, they are reporting a head wound. So we do have 1 head wound, 1 leg wound, and the rest of the wounds we're unsure of.
All right. Okay. So the first thing is, and that's one of the things where you would never want to, sort of, we're doing this, and you have to be a little careful when you're going live. You have to be a little careful about, trying not to make the situation worse. Obviously, I don't think we're having any impact on the situation, but we wouldn't want anyone to be getting any closer. In fact, let the police officers do their job. I want to discuss that and how that pertains to, because I actually have a friend, an old high school friend of mine is on the Boston Police Department, and he was one of the people who was tasked with finding the Boston Marathon bomber. And I'd like to discuss that because there were similar charges in that incident about the police. And so I would like to discuss that in a minute, but I'd also like to sort of finish about it's No Name in the chat, and one of the things that he is discussing is, I'm not entirely, so he had brought up the privatization of the police force, which I'm very concerned about the privatization of a lot of things. We have as future topics already on the schedule for this show, healthcare, possibly the privatization of the military, and a few other interesting topics. But with the police force and the prisons, I'm against the privatization of prisons. We've had that discussion before. That I think is going to be one we're going to talk about on this show. It's a serious problem. I was on non-sec when we had that discussion. I think that's a very serious problem. The other thing is, okay, I'm going to have to, just because I'm getting back some notes on this. The other thing is that I think there is some, unfortunately, privatization of the penal system, in as much as, the police, some of it's small potatoes. We all know, look, you're more likely to get a speeding ticket at the end of the month. Why? Because they want to make quotas on how many speeding tickets they issue. Part of that is to really try to do law enforcement, but really part of that is to try to bring in more revenue. When they seize cars, they seize things at they often will seize as much as I had a friend of mine who got pulled over because his car had been used in a crime. He lent his car to a friend, used the car in a crime. He gets pulled over. He had marijuana in the car. They seized the car. This was in California. He never got the car back. They sold it at auction. And it was one of those things. It wasn't even, it had nothing
civil
to do
asset
with him.
forfeiture.
Yep. and that's a decent revenue stream for them. So I don't
Yeah.
know if that's what he was talking
Civil
about.
asset forfeiture.
He also had
Yeah.
mentioned something else that I'd kind of like.
Well, what he's saying is I think with the prison. Oh,
Yeah, no, go.
let's see, justice system to take away people's freedom for. Yeah, so he's talking about. I think because and I think what I see what he's saying, or she. I'm not sure. It's no name. When you have a system where the prisons have a lobby, right? Because they do. They have a lobby group.
Yeah.
Who lobby for stronger sentencing and who lobby for stronger, longer sentences. When you have that going on, then the justice system, at the very least, is being influenced and lobbied in a privatization way. So while I'm not yet willing to say that the police are privatized, there is certainly a corruptive element of the privatization of justice that's going on, for sure.
Yeah, I think that's a fair point. The other thing is, so when it comes to police officers keeping people back, this is a trigger for me, and here's why. I remember actually being asked to be on a show, and I wasn't able to do it, but on how the abuses by the Boston Police Department during the Boston Marathon bombing. I live just outside of Worcester, which is, if you're lucky, about half an hour, 45 minutes from Boston. I live in Massachusetts, lived there all my life. I have family that has run the marathon repeatedly. I have friends in the marathon every single year. I know this well. And I remember the bombing like it was yesterday. And one of the interesting things about this is a lot of radio shows and commentary, especially in the South, would say what had happened was the police, when they had narrowed the suspects down to just one or two towns, they asked everybody in those towns to stay indoors at basically all costs. And there were a few people, not many, but a few who just basically said, hey, it is a free country. I can go out if I want to, and that's what I'm going to do. I'm going to go out. And they were reasonably limited in what they could do because technically you could go out. I think in one or two cases they did either arrest someone or take but there is a valid point there. Now, there's some concerns by people outside of Massachusetts. I didn't hear this concern from anybody in Massachusetts. I was phenomenally proud of my police department that day. There were concerns from people that the police department was overstepping its bounds in trying to get these guys. Now, if you don't remember what the bombing was these two brothers who were basically going to commit jihad, and they had detonated an explosive, killing 3, if I recall, wounding, I think 16 or more at the finish line to the Boston Marathon, which I've been at that finish line before. I know that area. Now that was actually one of the
Wasn't it
first years.
multiple explosive devices, not just one?
They had multiple ones. I think one of them didn't go off. It's actually been a little while. I only remember the one that went off. And I remember because it killed
Okay.
a young girl. I mean, it killed 3 people and wounded. It was lucky it didn't kill any more than that. What they did have, there were multiple explosions later. There were a lot of explosions later. What they did was they tied on explosive vests, and they decided to. They went and they shot a police officer. I think, if I remember, they may have killed an MIT campus security guard when they tried to carjack someone. I think they successfully carjacked him now, if I remember. It's been a little while. Then they shot an officer. This gets back into some of these wounds. They shot an officer. The officer was hit in the leg, but he was hit in the artery in the leg, and that is a life-threatening wound. That's as life-threatening as a hit to the neck, and he very nearly bled out. He had only minutes to live, but it's a thigh wound. You don't think of that as serious, but if you hit an artery, especially because gravity is just all the blood is going to run right out of your body. So there was a shootout, I think in Watertown, if I remember correctly. And during the shootout, one of the brothers got backed over by the other brother in the escape attempt. And they had shot and injured him, but then he got run over by his own brother. And the brother escaped. One of them escaped. The other one was killed there. when they approached him, he had on a suicide vest, so it was reasonable to assume the other one would have one as well. A manhunt began to find this guy, and
Right.
I was listening to conservative pundits sitting there saying, "Well, you can't violate people's rights when doing this, and you can't. This is police overstepping." And I'm sitting there going, "I know members of that police department." And what they're doing right now is trying to save people's lives by finding someone who's already bombed the marathon at the end of the marathon, who's just run over his brother, and is almost certainly wearing a suicide vest, which means the lucky officer to find him is probably dead. They are being asked to go find someone,
Right.
and the reward for doing your job correctly is you're probably going to die. And they all did it anyway. I couldn't have been prouder of the Boston Police Department that day. And so when people give police a hard time, there's absolutely, I've seen video of police officers setting people up. You can find it on YouTube. There's abuses, there's problems,
Mm-hmm.
absolutely. But when they talk about people are trying to get, and we haven't gotten an update, so I'd like to update where we are on the story. But you had said, people aren't going back, and people aren't, and they're limited in how much they can force people back. If a police officer tells me to do something, I do it. It's
Right.
that simple, and there is some white privilege to that. I know it's hard, and that's another discussion we already have on the books. But that's I get a little. I know it's amazing how many. This is where, oh God, I mean, we're going to be doing the live. We're going to be doing the punditry. It's all going to be one smorgasbord of news, politics, and culture. But while I've been ranting on police, do we have anything else? It said Dave McGinnis, who was in the and I guess it's about to rain over there. Heavy rain and thunder, because that's really what they need right now. So what do we know anything else right now? What's going on?
Yeah, it's still firing shots. It is now dark. So they have not ended that situation. Let's see. Yeah, still the same news. Lots of there's still active gunfire. More people are starting to crowd the area, which is unfortunate. And yeah, that's all we've got right now.
As much as I understand, we have a voyeur culture. We really do, and I get that, and that's another thing worth discussing. But at some point, it's like, don't you
Well, you
realize
can
that
even see it just on the
can,
freeway.
as like
Right.
rubbernecking. Christopher Hitchens had had a thing about that where he had said, what is it? Where he had said that, everybody is saying, oh, there but for the grace of God go I, when really what they're thinking is, there by the grace of God go he. I do think that there is a tendency to, when you see somebody who is in trouble on the freeway or something, you see a car wreck, you sit there and you say, well, however bad my life is, at least I'm not that guy. At least I haven't screwed it up that badly, which is it's an unfair thing to say, because you have no idea what this guy did or didn't do wrong in his life. You have no idea. Accidents happen. But I think that's what we're thinking.
Mm-hmm.
So you're
I also think that we just haven't. Go ahead.
Well, I do want to hear your response to that. I keep forgetting, there's a bit of a lag, and I will work on that. I'm slowly working. We now have the live chat up. Your window is now up. Your screen is up. So it's like, it's sort of,
I saw that.
We were just going to do a test today. Our test is apparently now the live, but and I'm going to try to fix one more thing. And I'm sorry, what was I saying? We were talking about, the rubbernecking on. I do want to get
voyeur culture.
I did want to get your opinion on that. But the other thing is, of course, we don't have a formal producer, and we've been talking about getting a formal producer. And I think right now we're both sort of doing production work, and I'd much rather that the two of us can stick to sort of punditry, which is essentially what we're doing. But I'd like to think we're doing a decent job of both running the show and commenting on this. So I do want to. So about the voyeur culture, what did you have to say about that?
So I think there's also just a natural biological tendency for our species to, anytime something is interesting or strange or different, particularly something dangerous, we have a tendency to stare, I don't think it's just, hey, I'm glad I'm not that guy, but I think there's also like, there's something deeply biological with, hey, Bob just got eaten by a jaguar. Don't be like Bob. What did Bob do wrong?
Yeah, I think that's
I
true.
really think there is something. Yeah, yeah. But the rubbernecking on the freeway bugs me as much as this does, because I don't know. There's something about making a spectacle out of somebody's tragedy and sitting there and staring at them as you drive by. Besides, you never know when you're going to see something you can never unsee.
That's a really good point, and I think that cuts both ways now, doesn't it? Which is, um, you want to see something new on some level. You want to see something that we haven't seen before. And I think we had talked about this earlier about the new experiences. Oh no, it was actually Mr. McGinnis, Dave McGinnis, with whom I had been speaking, and he had said that psychologically we remember the new experience as something different, something strange, much better. And I think we are looking for, especially if there's a monotony to a day to day, we don't have the same kind of regular stimulus in this world that we had. I think when we were the hunter-gatherers, foragers, I think life has changed a lot for us, but I think that means we are looking for that stimulation. And to some extent, we want to see something new. But I think you're right. I think it can quickly be something we really did not want to see. So what I'm going to
Yeah.
do, I do think that I'd love to have a sort of a better communication way. I think that so far we're getting some communication from people in the live chat, and I see some people there I recognize, see some new names too, all of which is nice. But what I'm going to do is, and certainly I'd love to have anybody who's got any questions or anything they'd like to discuss, they can bring that up. I am going to look at two things that I want to look at right here. I'm also going to send you, Ansgar, just a quick DM, so expect that in a minute. I've been trying to sort of do multiple things, but I want to hit you up with that.
We got to reach out for a producer.
We got a what?
We really do.
Well,
we got to
yeah,
reach out for a producer.
we
really
do. Yeah, I think that would make life a lot easier.
Yeah.
I know a couple of producers that might be willing to do it, and we just got to see if there's something to be had, or if it's just one of those situations where we're going to take 95%.
Right.
Inside joke that I just have to make. So to recap for anyone who's new here, and actually, well, I'll tell you what. Do you want to recap? That way I can actually send you this, because I can't recap and chat at the same time.
David McGinnis says, "I know who the guy is."
I have no clue what he's talking. Who, Mr. McGinnis? I've never heard of this guy. No, I don't know. I don't know. I know there's nobody here knows who I'm talking about. It's lies and slander.
Why don't you DM us? Yeah. Well, no, I think he might be saying that knows who the shooter is.
I think he knows who the producer is that I was talking about. But
okay, yeah. Never mind.
Let's hope he doesn't know who the shooter is. If he knows who the shooter is, he's got an instant spot on. We're going to test the midstream layout, and we are going to open up a guest window, and he's going to come in and he's going to enlighten us as to who this guy is. Because I do have a couple of questions for Mr. McGinnis. So, yes, we are saying.
Well, because you could find out on Facebook or something like that.
Okay. Yeah.
But yeah.
All right. Well, so we'll tell you what, why don't you, if you could just sort of give us a recap. I'm going to send you this message, and then we will I'll get back in.
Okay. So the recap so far is we had officers attempt to serve a warrant in Philadelphia, and a gunfight broke out. Several civilians, we don't know how many, were inside the house who fled the house. 6 officers were injured, 1 in the head, 1 in the leg. We don't know the extent of the other injuries. 2 officers are in the house right now, still trapped with the gunman. From what I've seen, they are on the bottom floor of the house, of the residence, and the gunman is held up in the top floor. He live streamed part of the gunfight before police shut down the live feed. He was live streaming it to Facebook. They wanted to end the shooting before nightfall. That didn't happen. Right now, we have SWAT team who seem to be repositioning around the residence, but they haven't been able to bring the shooting to an end yet. And I think that pretty much brings us up to date.
I think so, and I think you were right. Actually, I think McGinnis found the guy on Facebook. So I think I may start a conversation with him and see what he knows, or at least if he can maybe start DMing me some of the details. That would be great. I would like to know a little bit more about the guy in particular. I'd also like to know what his job is. He was home. This raid ostensibly happened. Ostensibly, I don't have the details, but just guessing around 2 p.m. No, later than that, 5 p.m. So he might have been home by that. I'd like to know a little bit more about who this guy is without necessarily getting too much into it. So hopefully, Mr. McGinnis will get in touch with us. All right, I finally sent you that DM, and yeah, this is so this is our first episode. Our first episode was scheduled for tomorrow. We were going to do a test today, and we were in a sort of a testing routine, getting ready to start the test when this happened. We don't have all our graphics up yet. We don't have everything working quite yet. It's working reasonably well, actually. There's some difficulty with some of the graphics early on, but everything's up and running. So this is a show. One of the things we're going to be doing a couple of things. We are currently scheduled every Thursday for discussions on politics, and we're scheduled every Thursday to discuss
culture, arts, news, whatever.
Yes. Actually, do you mind talking about our program? I got your reply. Thank you.
Sure. So Thursdays we're going to be doing a any kind of a show that is just discussing a topic from current events, politics, news, arts, entertainment, pretty much whatever strikes our fancy and whatever seems to be relevant at the time. However, it is Tuesdays. Were we doing Tuesdays for the other show?
Tuesdays
will be interviewing people, potentially hosting debates in the future, bringing on guests to discuss pretty much the same kinds of things, but topics that neither of us feel necessarily educated enough or informed well enough to feel as though we should be talking about the subject, just the two of us, and with you all in the chat. So yeah, that's basically how the show is going to go. So Tuesday we have scheduled. What was the topic?
Tuesday's topic is, and actually the calendar should be on the standing by page, but right now it's hold on one second.
Yeah.
Tuesday's topic is social media and how it influences our views on politics and culture, and how this demand for immediate information, of which, by the way, we are actually taking somewhat advantage of at this present moment. That hasn't escaped my notice, but
true.
Somebody may call us out as hypocrites on that one. We'll have that discussion. But in particular, also sort of how social media plays in radicalization of people, and I think you had actually framed it a bit better. But also how it people get false information from it, and what
Hmm.
do you
Well, also just
can
the
look it up?
everyday, inescapable nature
Oh,
of
yes.
politics now. You know, there's no break from politics, and there's even a push in most media to politicize it as much as possible. So people aren't really getting a downtime between politics. We've gone from one extreme to the other, to don't talk about politics and religion, to talk about it all the time, and in everything. So
Well, and
I think, yeah, that was the subject. And
define yourself by your politics. It used to be that you could be friends with someone who
yes,
didn't necessarily agree with you, and then now you can't. In fact, we have to define ourselves by, and it's led to this. I don't know if it's an increase in tribalism. It feels like that. I certainly perceive that. I don't know if there's the perception versus a
right.
reality situation there, but it certainly feels like um, that. I will say, and there's uh, flat Earth debates are a break from politics. Flat Earth debates are a break from reality. Um, the
They really are.
and we've got that with Cheshire Vic. She took it as a uh, what was it she said? She said I forget how she put
It's a
it. It was
trap.
it's
I'm
a
in.
trap I'm in. Yeah, that's right. It was like, oh, she knows us well. That's
Yes.
um, yeah. So we've got Cheshire Vic now. I saw Mikey
And
in the
tomorrow's topic.
tomorrow's topic is the cancel culture, or the um, uh,
Yes.
outrage culture. So
Mm.
where we shout down people with dissenting voices. We shout down, and I don't think we're going to necessarily hit directly on. There is something that's a topic I'm very interested in discussing. What I don't think it would be our first one out. Of course, technically now it would be our second one out, but which was a lot of what's been going on with, at least on the Twitter atheist community, what's been going on with Transgate and Red's rhetoric and all of that stuff. I think we're going to be discussing much
Yeah.
that sort of, but in a much broader context. We will, I think, also discuss that very specifically, because I am interested in that, and that issue has touched the lives of people I care about, myself, and everybody. So I think we'll discuss that
For
one
sure.
specifically. But tomorrow is going to be generally, what happens when somebody says something unpopular? They apologize for it. Is it not accepted? Are they shamed? Are they shut down? Did they get locked out? I think that Sarah Silverman was the example that you gave that I think was perfect. So I think that's going to be tomorrow's show. So tomorrow we got that one. Next Tuesday we've got um, Cheshire Vic, and yeah, she's well. Okay, so I guess she didn't know she was coming on, which is sort of, this is, I think we're going to be doing that. We're going to. I want to corner the market on the gotcha interview, where you don't even know you're being interviewed until it's just, listen, you up for a quick hangout? Do you mind? Okay, you're on live now with 1,000 people. I got a couple questions for you. So, yeah,
We
so
should master that style interview, stealth interview, man.
stealth, or just have the interview, but like not let her know that she's live. I really like that. She's not still in the chat, is she? It could ruin it if you yeah, that could be an issue. So
Yeah.
we'll and then I could look at the calendar and see what's next. I did want to, just to get back to the breaking story, because there's a couple things I would like to
Yes,
discuss
please.
about that. First of all, one of the things I found interesting was the injury um, to his leg, and that's another one where that sounds reasonably innocuous. It really isn't. And like I said, I got back to the situation, what happened with the um, suicide bomber there was a police officer in Boston shot in the leg, and he was really, by the time they stopped the bleeding, he was seconds away from bleeding out, needing immediate resuscitation, and probably
Right.
just not surviving. Um, okay, I'm having troubles. I have an image I would like to get up here, but I am having
Okay.
troubles. just getting it because of the way Twitter saves images and so on and so forth. So the leg injury, I don't want
While
to.
you're doing that, I've got
Yeah.
some updates.
Oh, please.
Okay, so we've got 4 women were escorted from the residence. So there were 4 women inside the residence when this all happened. The police were first called to the scene around 5 p.m. For narcotics activity. At least 1 officer has been shot in the head, 1 in the leg, and another in the hand. It's unclear where the others were shot. And I guess up until recently, the university in the area, University Health Services Center, had been on lockdown, but that was lifted at 7 p.m. Their time. And the police are urging people, of course, to seek shelter and stay out of the way.
All right, and that's okay. So that's 7 p.m. Show time too, which is another thing I do. We're supposed to have a clock up here. We got kind of a countdown timer to our. We're gonna sort of try to stay to a 1 hour show for the non-breaking news events, but I think we got a countdown timer there that says we've got 8 minutes left, and I think we're gonna may violate that today. So what I find interesting is, so the first report we got was that they were serving a warrant, and now it sounds like they were. I don't know if they were coming in on probable cause or,
Right.
what precisely was causing them. If it was probable cause, that explains a bit more in my mind. It explains the late hour at which this happened. It explains the number of injuries, because normally I really just would not expect to see that. Normally.
Unless the warrant was last minute, like, sometimes they call the judge and say, hey, we need a warrant right now.
Yeah. Well, yeah, that's true. They can absolutely, yeah, that's a fair point. All right, so and your frame has frozen again temporarily. So what I figured out was, in one of the tests, your frame would work while I was busy on one of the other monitors, but now it freezes. And so what I'm going to do is next time I'm going to save my work until you're like right in the middle of you're trying to do like a under without anyone looking. Like I'm just going to scratch my nose. I'm going to pick my nose real quick. I don't think I want to freeze it right there. And I'm like, oh, sorry, I had to get the news off of that monitor there and put it onto this monitor here, but I'm just being, I'm being a journalist and doing all my integritude stuff.
Sounds like something you do.
Yeah, it's totally something yes, sir, it is. Okay.
I'll just make sure that I pick my nose with my middle finger from now on. So if you save it,
you're gonna be doing everything. You're gonna be like, oh, Nick, I got something in my eye here, dude. So I'd to try to, I do think, okay, let's see. I'm going to actually move this and just make sure we got this in the right frame here. So I think this is our very first live show, sort of breaking news show, and I think we're going to end up, unfortunately doing more of them. And I think one of the reasons that one of the things that we can offer is commentary from 2 people who have some experience with this kind of thing, and also who are prepared to really go through the news sources, collate it, and try to figure out what's going on, so that people have the most up to date information possible. I do think we're buddies, and so there is going to be some banter back and forth and some joking, and I don't want that to detract from the severity of the news sources. One of the really good things is that nobody here is injured or dead. But I think you'll also see, I think we need to keep it serious, but I think we also need to, we're going to be us. And so to people who are watching now, if we start to get out of line, and you can always let us know. But I think also on some level, there's an acknowledgement that we're trying to keep it human as well, especially people who pick their nose on live stream.
Yeah. I think in general that there almost has to be some levity when dealing with some of these darker situations. As my mother used to say, I laugh to keep from crying.
Yeah. And I'm also, the other thing I want to do, I was so busy working on this image, which is actually queued up. Mr. McGinnis had some information for me, and I did want to get that because I do appreciate him doing that. And so let me, and I've also, this is one of the things, we rise to the level of our computer. I'm always maxing out the RAM on my computer. I got 300 windows open and the whole 9 yards. And then, of course, what ends up happening is once I have more memory, I realize, hey, I can up my computer even more, and I can have 36 windows open at a time and 300 browser things, and so that's where I am now. So of course the memory didn't solve a problem; it just allowed me to get myself in even bigger trouble. So there is a window that's got, there you are. So hopefully I can make you live again. Yeah, that'll kick in a second. All right, so let me. So as of now, they put the university. Which university was it?
It was University Health Medical Services, something like that. So it sounds like an extension of the university that is a hospital or something like that. They were closed down for, I guess, 2 hours because the calls came in around 5, and they were finally allowed to resume business around 7, and I guess some of the businesses around that area as well.
I wonder if by resuming the businesses, what they're hoping is that people will go, believe it or not, this is just a speculation. They're hoping that people will go to those businesses and hang out there instead of waiting outside and trying to see what's going on. Go in, get some air conditioning or
seriously,
whatever. All right, I'm gonna have to switch media because my computer is starting to have some difficulties. But what I'm gonna do now, this is one that you and I briefly discussed. I do think that it's a good idea not to talk too much about the shooter for a number of reasons. I do have some of his information here, and I'm going to try to look through that at a minute. I have to appreciate, thank you, Dave McGinnis, who is a good friend of mine, and he has sent me some of that information. So thank you. I don't know if he's still in the live chat or sort of bailed when we've been doing all this other thing. The other thing is I'm gonna put up now. We discussed this briefly. He did live stream some of the initial confrontation, and this is it doesn't actually look all that. I haven't seen it, and I don't think there's any need to see it. But we do have a screenshot of one image from it, and I think it's probably worth getting into that. So what I'm going to do here is I've got it queued up, and I will switch over to that in a minute. But it's actually, I mean, it's a little difficult, actually. I'm not trying to play it up or anything, and you're going to look at it and you're going to say, well, what's the big deal? But what I'm going to do is, and now here's the other thing, which is I am trying to, I switched out, I've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 monitors doing 17 different things, which of course means I can't find anything. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to put this video up. I'm not going to put up the video. I'm just going to put up, we just got one screenshot of it. And let's see here. All right. And so that's the video, or that's a clip from the live stream. And what you can see here is that I mean, it looks like I don't think that's a pistol that he's holding at him. That looks like, well, maybe it's a pistol. I don't know what that looks like to you. That looks like a more powerful arm.
No, it was the report said that he had a rifle, that he had a long gun. In fact, I listened to the actual 911 call,
Yep.
and the guy actually said, and the police actually said, long gun was in the actual report. Was
Yeah,
in
but
the actual call, as they said that he had a long gun and that they needed SWAT with long guns on site.
okay. So SWAT was okay. So SWAT was well armed. So this is at least one SWAT officer, but you can see another officer holding a child there on the upper right, and so which I mean,
Oh,
again,
yeah.
sort of suggests to me what we have been saying earlier, which is when you get this many officers wounded, usually it's because either they walked into a trap of some kind, which even then they sort of always assume it's a trap. It's hard to do that much injury to officers, or they are trying to protect innocent people, and that's how they get injured. So I just that's
So the sergeant of Philly police, who is in charge of the situation, is now urging people not to operate drones in the area. So apparently people were trying to get a look via drones.
Oh, God.
God.
Oh, Lord.
Oh man. Right?
Oh, God. Well, and I have a couple right now. We only have a couple of news sources in here, so I'm gonna move that off. I don't think there's any reason to keep that on any longer than necessary. We've only got two news sources plugged in here. I would like to get more plugged in at some point for these kinds of shows. So I mean, right now. I mean, again, this is.
Can I?
Yes,
I want to
please.
share something with you. Hold on. I want to share something with you. Now, this doesn't have anything to do with the breaking news itself, but merely a cultural attitude that frustrates the hell out of me. And you can choose to, I mean, I could even take a screenshot of this and black out the @ if you want me to. You tell me if you want to talk about this, but I sent you somebody's tweet and it's just like, come on, really? That is just gross.
All right, let me. God. I mean, again. Normal. I mean, if
And
I was
sadly,
going live, I'd have set this up so
there's
that I was ready
thousands and thousands of likes.
to. Let's.
Yeah. Here, I'm blacking out the name now, just in case you want.
All right.
Just in case you want to do that.
Oh God! Whenever I see that I've.
And then I'll send you the
bane of my existence. You have mail from Ansgar. Oh, good. What lovely joy do I have today? Okay, what is
Oh, that's funny. All right, so I've got that copy, and then I'm just gonna go ahead and send it through. Do you want me to send it through DM or email?
Oh, yeah. Why don't you DM it first, and if we decide we're going to put it up, you can either screen share it, or I can put it up in the main window.
There you go.
I had access to the live chat through the back end, but now it's when I switched to the screen to get you back up, I lost that. And again, this is all stuff that would normally be worked out. This is very beta. And Puddle has joined us, which is good. We should probably end up doing maybe another recap in a minute, just for Puddle. No, we won't say that's the reason. But this is one reason why I'd like to have, for testing. I'm not going to drop in every news source that we're going to have plugged in here for testing, because it just slows things down. makes life a
Right.
lot more difficult. And really, I wasn't anticipating doing our first live story until maybe next week. Um, and
Right.
yeah, I know.
This one just happened to be, yeah.
Oh, Jesus.
But
Where did that
seen
come
it, huh?
from? Oh, God.
That came from I linked you the account above, but that's a, yeah. And look how
Yeah,
many likes it has and retweets,
yeah. No, we're gonna put that up.
and
Um,
it's, yeah, I figured as much.
oh, Jesus. Quickly looking to see
See,
if
now this
anybody I
is
know is.
definitely, I would
Oh my
say,
God. Okay, okay, so this has had. Oh wow. We don't have a vertical window for this, but it's easy enough. It's easy enough to do. Um, that's really wow. All right, so um, Hansgar found a piece of internet culture about this story.
culture.
Culture, yeah. Well, yeah. Uh, wow. Floating around, and
Technically, it's culture.
technically, it's not the kind that you would like. Um, so what I'm going to do is, and this may freeze you up again because right now I can only work on that. Um, but I think that's worth putting up, and then we can have you talk about how you found it. I think you're right. That's definitely worth talking about. Um, so it pertains specifically to this story. This,
And before we put it up, don't go harass this person.
well, yeah, no, let's not. I don't think there's a point. I think hopefully they're going to get harassed by someone. Wow. I mean, sorry, let me rephrase that. That didn't come out quite the way. Speaking of phrasing, I mean, there's gonna get pushback.
No,
If
it
they,
didn't.
yeah, don't bother getting them because so many people are just gonna do it anyway. It's your wasting your time. Let's let other people be tribalistic. Um, no, I mean, with this many likes, the problem isn't, in my opinion, the problem isn't that they said this. Um, the problem is that this has, as of
Right.
when you did this, as of when you screenshot this, this has 1,630 retweets. And sometimes, I mean, to be fair, sometimes people
Yep,
retweet stuff that they don't like.
6,000.
Yeah,
They usually quote tweet it, but then it's also got 6,000. It has over 6,000 likes.
Jesus. All right, now I have my system is starting to
Yeah.
lag a bit. Um, so it's just the other thing is, if you wanted to, you could screen share because your screen is down again because whenever I have to access my desktop,
If you
you're
want me to screen share, I can do that.
okay. Let's do that. Definitely the version that doesn't have the so let me get your image back up and live, and then maybe we'll just have you screen share it. Um, that
Yeah.
file I
The
sent you, just
go to,
just the one with
uh-huh.
the donkey in the compromising to make sure that that one's not the don't share that one.
Oh,
We've
right.
we've already
Don't
done
share that one.
yeah, don't share that one. We've already done enough in the first 5 minutes. It's a violation of copyright law, YouTube um, YouTube guidelines and all this. This is a great show. It's spectacular. I'm very excited. I love this plan. I'm excited to be a part of it. Let's so I
Uh,
was using temper. Yes, they're copyrighted, but it was just placeholders while we're looking for. We've licensed everything. This is all right. Are you back up and live?
okay.
You're
Can
not
you
quite.
see?
No, I can't. So I just gotta find the uh. So I'm gonna get you back up. Uh, the problem is so you are Okay, that's your Twitter, which actually, if I close that, it'll make finding you a lot easier. All right. Well, I just closed it and I realized I kind of need access to Twitter. There you go. You are, well, you're white while
Mhm.
it reloads and refreshes the frame. So as soon as and it's refreshed and there it
Got
is.
it.
That is a little small. People may have a hard time seeing that. Is that something you can make bigger
Okay,
or
let me see if I can.
there you go. Much better. It is
Oops,
a
come
little
on.
out of
Oh, I
the,
got to.
yeah.
Yeah, that's as close as I can get without it
Uh,
starting to scroll off the side for some
all
reason.
right. If people can't read that, it's hard for me to judge what people can or cannot read. If people cannot read that, I can get that up uh, on one of the information boxes in the that we have. But I
Yeah, but it
figured just the
says,
easiest.
uh, yeah, finding out that there's an active shooter in Philadelphia, but they're only shooting cops, and you've got this little guy. He like looks, and then don't care. And yeah, it had almost 6,000 likes at the time that I shared it. By now, it's already up to 6.2 thousand likes.
Oh, Jesus. Um, yeah, that's
Yeah. hmm
um,
This is one of the more popular tweets, by the way, of the of the incident. I was searching for news on social media, and this is one of the most popular and trending tweets, so to speak. So
wow.
yeah, that's wonderful.
Yeah. Wow. Oh my God. Well, let me.
Yeah,
Yeah. That.
yeah,
Okay.
fun, huh?
Yeah. So it looks like okay. A number of people couldn't read it. Yeah. Squidward was in there. So I will see if I can get it back up on my own here. But I'd like to get the studio
Yeah,
controls back up, and then we will. What did it say? So I think a few people heard what we said, but not many. So I am going to try to put that one up myself. But that's we're on another topic already scheduled.
this
Yeah.
is radicalization in the extreme. Yeah, this is radicalization. It really is. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Well,
Just, but sorry, I'm having a hard time even knowing what to say.
I I feel the same way, and I think my wife would like to thank you for getting me to shut up for a couple of seconds. That's not that easy to do. Um, I think I'm very proud of the fact that we live in a country where you can say those things if you want. Um, so
For sure.
I will say that. I think that that kind of thing is um, really it's I was going to say disgusting. That's a word that's I think overused, and I'd like to try to describe it more than just using a simple adjective. The fact of the matter is, again, these are people who one officer has a head wound. Um, One has a hand wound. If the bullet went through his
hmm
hand, he may lose significant functionality for that for the rest of his life. That image that we just put up
hmm
earlier was of an officer holding a child while they are approaching someone who is obviously phenomenally dangerous. Cops are not perfect, and there are bad cops, and there are cops who plant evidence, and there are cops who do terrible
Yes.
things. I'm not going to sit here and say that you can't question cops, but um, there are 6 cops that are injured. One has a head wound. He may have kids. He may have a wife. We don't know. And here's someone who's like, oh, somebody's shooting at cops. Who cares? Cops are here first. And another topic I would like to discuss too at some point is the law and the art of criminal defense, because I'm a big fan of criminal defense attorneys, which I understand why they're not particularly well liked. And
Yeah.
that's not also always unfair either. But they are our
Right.
first and last line of defense. And just sorry, I'm going to try to switch here to get back. I want to see a couple of things, and I'm going to try to get this. I want to try to get this image back up in. Sorry, I've got multiple things going on. This
Yeah,
is
go
why.
for it.
Yep, definitely a producer would be very nice. It's amazing. These officers don't get paid a tremendous amount of money. They certainly don't get the respect they deserve, and all it takes is a couple of bad officers, of which there always are, to really screw it up for everybody, because we put a lot of trust in them, and when that trust is violated, we take it much more seriously than we do in most other professions. And I think that's because you do put your life in their hands, and they actually have a phenomenal amount of power over you. So when that power gets abused, I think it's justifiably. I think that people in any position of law enforcement who use their position to engage in a crime should have immediately 20% added to whatever the normal penalty would be for that crime. You just have to, if you're going to be in law enforcement,
agreed.
You have to be held to a higher standard. Yeah. But
Well,
on the flip
I know
side,
this is a subject for another day.
yeah, it
Oh,
is.
go ahead.
Well, no. So that's, I mean, that's it. The flip side is, we
Yeah.
do. They're held to a higher standard, and when they
For good
violate it,
reason.
it's a bigger problem. It just is.
I was going to say, for me, while this is a subject for another day, I think that it's not the police in and of themselves that are the issue. It is the framework that has been built that they operate in that is the largest issue. Yeah, there are individual cops who are assholes, and most I would think are probably a good. I have no data to suggest, how many of the officers are great people. That's a pretty hard thing to parse out. But my intuition would say that most are good people who really do want to serve their communities. However, the framework in which they're operating in, that seems to me to be a larger issue than whether or not some portion of the officers themselves are racist or violent or brutal, because the proper system should be weeding those kinds of people out anyways, or at least a large portion of them.
Yep, I think that's a good point. I'm gonna, like I said, I'm doing a couple of things here. We got a complaint, Fox News. So basically, it could be anything. I discussed my use of Fox News earlier, and I think it's a legit complaint. I am not a fan of Fox News, but I am a fan of using as many sources as possible. One thing I will also say is, on occasion, when I'm looking at the news, I like to see what Fox. I don't take them as a particularly reliable source. I think there are times when they are usable, but you have to understand sort of how and why and the context. But what I will say is that every now and then, sometimes when there's breaking news that is positive towards a Democrat or a liberal, I like to switch and watch Fox News simultaneously. That's one thing that this is actually set up to do, where we can put any news source in any window we want. And I like to watch these simultaneously, because it is, and I get people all the time who sit there and say, well, you're a liberal, so you never watched Fox News, so how do you know it's unreliable? I know, because I do watch it, and I compare it in live to what 16 other sources are saying, and it's always really, it's an education.
So here's the latest update, by the way.
Yes.
So it was so here's everything we've got. At large, so 4:30 p.m. was when the shootings took place.
Okay.
The police said that the incident began when a narcotics officer attempted to serve a warrant. So they did attempt to serve a warrant. Philadelphia police commissioner said that the officers were already inside and in the rear of the building when the gunman opened fire, forcing them
Jesus.
to escape, like by diving out of windows and doors. And they're describing it a barrage of bullets. They took cover behind cars and blocked off the surrounding streets as they were fired upon by an unidentified shooter. 3 hours after the shooting began, they were attempting to negotiate their surrender, but he was still intermittently firing at the officers. They're concerned about a potential hostage situation, considering there's 2 officers still stuck inside. He said that I'm going to read his quote. "We believe that they're okay, and I'm not going to say much more about that right now out of concern for their safety. But we believe that this male is in a certain part of the building. I won't tell you where they are, where he is, so that I don't endanger the officers on the scene in any way." So yeah, that's other officers were injured in a car accident at a nearby intersection while responding to the scene. Let's see. There are no life-threatening injuries, including the one with who was hit in the head, but apparently he was just grazed. So there we go.
Okay, so one of the interesting things about that is that they seem to not be able to confirm that the shooter was the one
True off.
they were actually getting serving the warrant on.
Right. They haven't said that. So it could very well be that they were there for someone else on a rather, different, a completely different thing. And this person just opened fire. We also don't know what kind of building this is. Are there renters there? I mean, there were 4 female civilians that were escorted. So this could have been a small duplex or apartment building or something like that.
All right. So what I'm going to do is I've got the image up. I'm gonna transition that over. We are out of. Actually, we're not out of. You know what? I'm going to move the image. I was going to cover up the live chat. And that was, but it's hard to do that without that being seen as commentary on our audience. And frankly, there's only a few people there I would want to take having it taken personally. The rest really, no. But for some people there, yeah, it's
Just
about
it's already up to 7,000 likes.
Oh my God. You have to wonder if people are. I mean, sometimes I think people do this to get attention and all the. But wow. So that's it. It's up. I'm not going to leave that up too long because I don't like having that up there. I do think that's worth. I think that's worth discussing, and I'm glad we found it. You have to wonder. You have to wonder.
Okay.
Yeah.
Just in principle, I want to say, even when Osama bin Laden, who we can all say was objectively just a horrible, person, at no point did I celebrate his death. Even when I recognized that this human being's death might be a positive benefit to the world, even if I recognize that, I don't have to celebrate in the suffering or the injury or the death of another human being.
That's yeah. What were you gonna say?
Yeah, that's just my ethical stance on that. I cannot abide, at least in myself, celebrating the suffering of another human.
I think that's a very I like that observation. I think that what I like about it, especially the way you just framed that, is that it's as much about wanting to look at yourself in the morning too,
Yeah.
and to realize that he had children, he had um, family, and while it is impossible to remove from him the damage that he did to other people who had children and who had a family, we are most defined by how we respond when confronting monsters. And I think that's a topic you and I both find interesting for a number of reasons, because a lot of the topics that we have scheduled for the next month, we're scheduled a month out in advance now, and most of those topics are how do you deal with things that you don't like, people that you don't like, situations that you don't like, and I think that defines us as much as anything does. So.
Both as individuals and a culture, to be honest.
No, I think that's another very important observation. All right. Well, while I'm doing all these shenanigans on the back end, uh, your your ugly mug ain't on the thing here. So let me see if I can fix that and get you back up there. And in the meantime, actually, I'm gonna put that up. Oh, that's not gonna help. So we've got, I've been sort of neglecting the chat because I had to take down the chat window for a minute. And I think one of the other things, I mean, we do have, so like I said, I've actually got, so I've got like a laptop, it's an old laptop, but I got an old laptop there, a really old laptop there, like a Pentium 2 or something like that, I think. But it can view web pages. And so, we just got this sort of set up. And if we were prepared for this as we were planning on being, um, all of this would be good to go, and I wouldn't be viewing sort of the back end of the live stream from the same computer that I'm viewing all my news and trying to get all the everything else done. So it's a little hectic. Not bad, I think, for a beta test. It's. I'm going to blame Ansgar. I was ready to go to bed, and he called me up and said, "Nick, there was a shooting, man. We got to go live." And I was just like, "No, let's wait." And he was like, "No, Nick, if you're my friend, you'll do the." Okay, that wasn't quite the story. Go with it. Go with it.
Yeah, I was blubbering. In fact, I made him get on video chat just so that I could blubber and he could watch a grown man cry.
Yeah. Well, I've seen plenty of grown men cry, but usually it's in the mirror every morning. Oh, and I'm kidding.
Oh, that got dark. Oh, man.
Yeah. Okay.
Hello? Suspect has been arrested.
Oh, wow. Okay. Well, we have a couple of questions that I did want to deal with in the live chat. I will let you catch up on that. That is good, and he's alive, which is good too. So let me just, why don't you catch up on that, and I will. They're gonna cut. Okay,
Oh,
so
no, never mind. That's not him. That's a different thing that somebody posted. Fake news.
fake news.
Literally
Fake
fake news. Sorry.
All right, all right.
Yeah.
Well, that is one thing I wanted to discuss with you at some point anyway, which is we're gonna have to make sure, because we are streaming live, that to just I want to make sure that check the source before
Yeah.
we go on something. Just so. Okay, so Puff said, in a scenario like this, they're gonna cut the power to the building so the shooter can't access to watch online or leave due to impending weather, and then run a signal. Well, I mean, if they cut the power, there's only so much he can broadcast from his phone. Facebook, ostensibly, I mean, Facebook has procedures for this kind of thing already in place, and they will cut it. I mean, if the police say cut it, they will. And this is another example of, I'm sure some seriously right wing. I'm not talking just like regular Republican. I mean, some seriously right-wing guy is going to sit there and say, "Oh, why is Facebook kowtowing to the police?" Now, if the police say, "We want you to cut a live feed," Facebook, Twitter, all of these guys will do it for public safety. They're not required to, but they will. So
Right.
I don't think he's going to be broadcasting. I think they're going to. I think they're going to. I think they're going to monitor that. They probably want his phone working to some extent because they want to be able to talk to the guy. But otherwise, they're going to cut everything they can, cut the power. And the other thing is, I mean, if it's SWAT, they should have night vision, so they do have the advantage when the power has been cut.
Yeah.
So I think, but I think he's brought up some very good points. Um, yeah, hopes and prayers. Yeah, those are going to be as useful now as they always are. So, all right. Well, I think everybody has seen this sufficiently, so I will take that down.
Yeah.
And thank you for finding that. I think that was worth discussion, and I'm sure that'll come up in one of our future episodes. I think one of the things I'm going to do is now that that's down, I'm going to take a break for a minute, and we can cover. I've said this before, and it may be worth. I think there are a few new people. It may be worth sort of uh, doing yet another recap at some point in a minute. But what I do want to cover is um, the oh, well. So there's the schedule there, but actually, no. You know what? I don't have the schedule handy, and I'm going to have to screw up things even more to do it. What I will do, and this is just because I understand, it is admittedly somewhat disturbing to have Fox News in the center panel on the layout. And not that I'm a huge fan of CNN, but if it's them or Fox News. So I will swap out those layouts, and then I mean, really, if you're going to get news, it's Reuters or AP. Those are the real sources. But as long as you understand, somebody had mentioned MSNBC. I like MSNBC, but they're not. I think they're better than Fox News, but not by as much as I think people would uh,
Yeah.
like to say or suggest. And I think people who go to MSNBC for the most part already have their opinions made up. And I think I think it's not. I like MSNBC. They have a bit more of the take that I tend to like, but that's why I'm suspicious of them. You know what I mean? Does that make sense?
Yeah. Yeah. You realize you have a sort of a blind spot.
Yeah. I was a huge fan of Keith Olbermann, but one of the things I would say is he's like dessert. You know what I mean? He's fattening. He ain't good for you. You gotta realize that it's empty calories, dude. It really tastes good, and oh my God, do you feel like $1,000,000 on it? But it's not um, it's not where the real
Okay,
news
so the
is.
person that I saw being arrested, that people are saying, "Oh, look, they got him," was just a person of interest, not the active shooter.
Okay, so a person of interest. So that suggests that he's one of two people. Either he's the guy who the warrant was issued for initially, um,
Yeah.
which is possible. I'd wonder why they wouldn't say that, but they may just
And
person of
he's
interest.
yelling at some woman on the sidelines who's watching, a bystander who obviously seems to know the guy as he's being put in the police. Not Bull like our Bull, Bull just shot a cop as he's being shoved into the police car.
Wait,
So
Bull just shot a cop? Does Steve know?
that's what the person of interest was saying when he was being put into the police car to a bystander.
This is going to completely
BOUL.
this is going to completely change the whole non-sec landscape. Just the whole wait, BOUL.
Yes,
Oh,
BOUL.
oh. Never mind. Okay.
Yeah, different bull.
Different bull. Okay. I So it's an inside joke. We should probably keep inside jokes to a reasonable minimum. But we spent some time in circles where there's a guy named Bull, short for his Twitter handle. But you couldn't meet a nicer or more honest person. And
True.
if he shot anyone, um, Yeah, that would in my mind be like a sign of the coming apocalypse. That means that something's really wrong in the world if I get that wrong about a human being because he's a great guy. But all right. To
I have a question for you
yeah.
before we do our recap. Um, what is your stance on what some people would call politicizing a shooting right as it's happening? So, like, for instance, I'm looking at a tweet right here, and I don't necessarily disagree with the take, but I just want to get your feeling about it.
Yeah.
And he says, it is ironic that a bunch of professional good guys with guns are getting their asses handed to them, but we're going to arm teachers. So I understand the sentiment. I even agree with the sentiment
Yeah.
that, arming teachers, when professional law enforcement can, easily be overtaken like this. So I shouldn't say easily, but it can happen. But what is your stance on, when does it become the right time to make those kinds of statements? Or do
Um,
you think that it's all good?
that's a really good question. Wait. You and I discussed this. We ambushed the guests, not each other. Excuse me, this is a live stream. You're going to ask me that? Really? Really?
Hey
Okay.
man, I'm just being in character here.
Yeah, no, no, that's a spectacular question, and this is the perfect right time to ask it. Um, I think that that's a very difficult one to answer. I will say that there's a lot of many of the people who object to it, and I think there are some legitimate objections, but many of the people who do object to it don't object uh, based on any sort of moral grounds. They tend to object, in my experience, from what I've seen, they object because they don't agree with what's being said. And
Right.
they kind of want to shut down the conversation. Ideally, now I'm not thrilled with how this comment said what it said. So I think you and I are of the
Right.
same mind on that. So I
It's
think
a little mm, it's a little cutting,
it is,
you
especially
know.
for being live and in the moment. But then again, maybe that cutting wouldn't be as effective at any other point. But
Hmm.
and it's an important sentiment. I did a piece on gun shootings, and I pointed out, and I get this. People tell me all the time when I talk gun control, people all the time sit there and say, well, you should wait until, at least 2 weeks since, there's been a mass shooting or something. Otherwise, you're politicizing the shooting. Here's the problem. We have a mass shooting in this country on average every 7 days, roughly. Actually, I think it's less than that. I forget what it was at the time when I did this piece, but it's pretty frequently. Now, people sit there and say, oh, no, that's not true. Well, a mass shooting is described as a shooting in which 3 or more people were involved. This is a mass shooting at this point. Actually, it may not because of it. So it depends on how you choose to define mass shooting. But
Right.
they happen frequently enough that if I'm going to not discuss it for 14 days to not politicize it, I'm never going to get to discuss it. That's it. I'm just not going to get to discuss it. Now, that doesn't mean discussing it in the moment is necessarily the best thing to do, but on the flip side, I'm not convinced, he's the guy who wrote this isn't necessarily going to be heard at any time. So I think first of all, let me ask a question, which is, have I managed to cover all the sides so that it looks like I'm not taking a position at all? Because I've just covered, I'm going to agree with everybody. Here's a way to not take a position. I think, so, and we had, yes, so somebody has pointed out, and this is, as of this moment, that we've heard all of the 6 officers have non-life-threatening wounds, although one is to the head,
Right.
so I'm concerned about that one. I think,
And we don't know the condition of the 2 officers stuck in the house.
thank you for reminding us of that. Back to that question, I think it depends on the context and how you're doing it. I think the argument that it's being politicized, the problem is the guy who wrote that tweet, I don't think he's trying to politicize it. So his motive in this case isn't to politicize it. His motive is to try to draw attention to an issue that's important to him. it is a political issue, but it's not.
Right.
It's not. He's not interested in it because he's interested in politics, and he's not interested in drawing attention to it because he wants that attention for a political gain. It's specifically
Right.
because of how he feels about this issue and because he's trying to save lives. Um, so I try to keep that in mind when I judge how recently after something. I do hesitate to chastise anyone for politicizing an issue because it's a good way to shut down the conversation without me having to prove my point that that person is wrong.
Right.
And I have to question their motives in order to make that. It's in essence, it's an ad hominem, and I am questioning their motives the second I say that, and I don't think that's productive, and I think that makes a genuine dialogue difficult. Having said that, I do think there's something to be said for having decorum and for trying to keep remembering that there's a time and a place and trying to honor that. But you can't always honor that. And some people ask that you sacrifice your values in keeping with and in paying homage to and honoring that. And I disagree with doing that.
Right.
So if that answers your question.
I would my stance here would be that it really depends in and how you do it. Well, I think my specific objection to the way that tweet is worded is he says, he talks about good guys with guns getting their asses kicked, which to me just seems very, I don't know, disrespectful, very irreverent to men and women who have put their lives on the line to save people today. I get the point that he's making, but I almost think that had he said, look, trained police officers, good guys with guns are in a bad situation where they've been shot, two have maybe been taken hostage, and we want to arm citizens who aren't nearly as well trained or nearly as well prepared. I think just worded in a different way, even as it's ongoing, might have felt a little less like someone's trying to be edgy. You know what I mean? You there? Hello?
Sorry, I muted. I muted and forgot
Okay.
to unmute because I've got the boom mic, and so when I go pour myself some water or something, I know you really want to hear the kitchen sink running, so I mute the boom mic. One of the things I do want to find is what I think is probably one of the best clips I've ever seen of that exact sentiment, and I'm going to try to get that up again. I had a system for putting that up right into the stream there, and I don't have it, but this is, and some people are going to recognize this, it is from a television show, and it is the best explaining of that sentiment that you just gave that I've ever seen. But I'd like to, rather than actually set it up, I want to just play it, but it's going to take me a minute to find it, and then I will drop it into the video. But I think there is, there are 37 industrialized countries in the world. 36
Mhm.
have gun control, and it works extraordinarily effectively. Now, I keep getting told that there are stabbings in some of those other countries. Yeah, we have stabbings here too. But it's hard to commit mass murder with a Bowie knife. It's doable, but it's a lot harder. And while I admit that the only thing that stops a bad guy with a gun is a good guy with a gun, I freely admit that. I've said that repeatedly. The only thing that stops a bad guy with a gun is a good guy with a gun, period. I agree. That is, in my
True.
opinion, deliberately missing the point, which is I think the bad guys shouldn't get the guns in the first place. And I've been told that that can't be done. That's what they said in Australia, and they did it. I think I love how people are sitting there going, these are the same people who tell me I'm unpatriotic because I think America can't accomplish this or can't accomplish that. You're telling me we're too stupid to figure out how to get the guns from the bad guys? We can't figure that out. We land a man on the moon, but we can't take away the guns. Australia did it. They had guns. nearly as many
Yeah.
as we did, and they did it. I have more faith in Americans, and I don't know what these unpatriotic jerks are who sit there and say that we can't accomplish that, but I think we can. And the idea that the idea is, okay, we want to make sure the good guys have guns. Okay, fine, you're making it easier for the good guys to have guns, but you're also guaranteeing that every bad guy who wants a gun can get one. I think that's a bad policy. I don't understand why that's in contention. Um, and we know that's a
Well,
bad policy
I
because
mean,
of the history. Yes.
the big thing that people like to bring up is the idea that one of the first things that a tyrannical government does is disarm the populace.
Yes.
That is the biggest argument that I hear most often. I don't think I come down quite as hard on the gun control issue as you do. I think a more middle ground stance where I think that there are ways to make policy that would make guns much more difficult to be put in the hands of bad guys, while still allowing for gun rights to be preserved. And I know that's a topic for a different show, but I think that'll be an interesting one for you and I to get into.
Yeah, and we already have that one scheduled too. I wish I could bring up the calendar that I had the date. Actually, I could use one of these other things, but I do want to bring up this clip. Somebody else in the live chat here did point out. They said, okay, what was it? Australia doesn't have free speech, and it's not next to Mexico. God, it's hard to know
Oh
where to
yeah.
go with that one. First of all, they do have free
Well, it's
speech.
it's kind of true.
Well, they do have
Well,
free
no, they
speech.
have. There are some places in. I would say that they don't, considering there are still some places that blasphemy laws are on the books in Australia. I do not consider that free speech.
Well, I
Hell,
agree.
Ireland just barely repealed their blasphemy laws, and there are blasphemy laws still on the books in Canada.
There are sodomy laws in the books in the U.S. Does that mean we're not a free country?
I'm just saying though that I think blasphemy is beyond blasphemy laws. I think are um, beyond just sodomy laws, especially since sodomy laws, while aren't necessarily speech. Now, I think that they're stupid, and I think that they should be abolished. And I think if you tried to enforce them, that fortunately, what would end up happening is it would be in contested in the Supreme Court, which is something I would really like to see happen, to be quite honest, to get rid of some of those stupid laws. But when you specifically have blasphemy libel as something that the government can bring up against you, I think I don't know. I think that's a really, really awful thing. They have a bastardization of free speech, but just recently with the to give you an example, with the there are things like video games that can't be sold in Australia. There are censorship laws on media in Australia that aren't just like what can be broadcast. I'm talking about what you can actually even bring into the country. They are incredibly hard on any image of drug use or anything like that. So I don't know. I'm just
Well, I want to say
saying
the live chat is siding with you, which is awfully suspicious of our
I
current
wouldn't
crew.
consider them a free speech, not even a little bit.
I am suspicious of this live chat. I'm just saying. I don't. They're agreeing with you. That's concerning. Well, and we've got a couple Aussies in there, and I do think they're more qualified than I am. I will say, so I haven't looked at it, so it seems like they feel like they know things that I don't, and that's often the case. So I'm more than willing to be educated about it, because it's most when I think I understand another country that I realize I don't. So we got Aussies in the live chat telling me that you're right and I'm wrong. What I will say is most of the examples you gave, we also really do have in the U.S. in one way or another, which is sort of the point about the anti-sodomy laws. We also do have, we have hate, we don't prosecute hate speech, we do prosecute hate crimes. And so we do have, our own restrictions, and not necessarily on free speech as much, but I did want to sort of point out we have restrictions on behavior, and we consider ourselves a free country. But there are countries, marijuana is actually still technically it's a federal crime. It's illegal. Certainly, it was a Schedule I substance up until recently, and we call ourselves a free country. So that even though there are exceptions, and I will admit your exceptions do sound more than trivial, it still is one of those. Yes, I know you live. Okay, so I said we have Aussies. I literally said we have Aussies in the live chat, and they are correcting me and siding with you. And the first one to do it stands up and says, "Well, I'm an Aussie, so I know what I'm talking about." Well, who do you think I'm talking about? Live chats. I don't know.
Yeah, I just want to put. There's an argument going on in chat about how some people don't think that you could stand up to the government in a rebellion, and Unvarnished is saying of course you could. Someone's saying they've got the nukes, they're not going to Unvarnished, they're not going to nuke their own country. And let's be clear, this government, no government is going to nuke their own soil to put down a rebellion. Other weapons, perhaps. Nukes, not going to happen. But we also can't forget, and I'm not usually we're gonna really rebel kind of guy, but we can't forget that the people who make up the military are people too. They're not robots. There's only so much the government will be able to push them into doing. But the more and it really depends, on how on the culture of the country. Like you go to a place like China, you can see what happens where the government is almost a state religion. We don't have that here, at least not yet. We have a country that prizes individual liberty and individual freedom.
You're breaking up, and I don't think that's just
so.
We have a country that prides itself on individual freedom. Is sounded like what you said. Yeah.
Yes, on individual, hyper individualistic. Did you get that?
I did not. Part of that may be what I'm going to do is I'm just going to try to cut some of the bandwidth overhead here. Yeah, I'm. That's maybe part of the problem, and then my computer is getting a little there we go. And then of course, right as we were about to go live,
coming through better now.
It is now. Yep.
Say is we are a country that we don't worship the government, at least not yet. We kind of worship hyper individuality, and I don't see that our current military would be so brainwashed by any administration that they would be weaponized against their own citizens. I mean, a certain portion would, but we have to remember that these are people too with families and friends and who value this country as well. So the concept of a rebellion isn't as absurd as people like to to pretend that it would be. Yes, the military has the planes and the tanks and all that stuff, but how many of the military would be willing to slaughter, their own citizens to put down a rebellion in this country, not in a country where the leadership is practically a god figure?
Well, and I've heard, I think I've made similar arguments, and usually the counter I hear to that is what they're really talking about is a generation from now. So we have to have our guns today to protect ourselves from um, from the a tyranny and some unknown tyranny in some possible unknown tyranny in the future, a generation from now. And listen, I think every human being needs to be given, every American citizen needs to be given $10,000 to protect ourselves against the, future apocalypse and so we can spend it now and have a good time. And I think that's what I mean. You can make up a million could happen in a generation from now. I'm not swayed by the
Sure.
the power of that argument. And the truth is, if the U.S. military does decide that it wants to come after you. I don't think there are too many weapons that you can get legally today that you can have that's going to repel the U.S. military, especially when they've got drones. And there's the ones that fly, um, thousands of feet in the air, but there's also the ones that they've got the small hunter-seeker drones that can, go around corners and shoot things without
Sure.
unless you've got that kind of stuff at your disposal, there isn't a whole heck of a lot
I
that I see
actually,
anyone doing against the military.
I don't know. I actually disagree. If you're talking about here's the thing. At that point, the military becomes an occupying force. If we're talking about a state of true rebellion, right?
Yeah.
It depends. At that point, it comes down to determination, because history shows that after a certain number of the population is killed in any struggle, that oftentimes the will to fight that battle publicly wanes or diminishes. The other thing is that you have to remember again that these military people, they still are, people. A subset of them are not, I don't know how many, but depending on the situation, of course, but a subset of them are not going to just, wantonly murder their neighbors and family. Some of them are going to defect. Some of them are going to join this, this this rebellion that we're, thought experimenting up in our heads. And we have seen that protracted occupying forces have a very, very difficult time holding on to territory. People that they are occupying decide to continually resist. We've seen it with Ireland. We've seen it. We've seen it with the Goths. We've seen it with. We've seen it with even in Afghanistan. We've seen it all over the world, where an occupying force, unless they can, I mean, really put down the population to the point where they're just willing to accept brutal rule, they typically, if they're willing to continue the fight, that is a very difficult population to remain in control of.
That is a fair point. I think it sounds a bit like what you're arguing. I think this is a fair argument, and I'm still looking for that clip, and I thought I found it, and of course I didn't. But I think what you're arguing is a bit more that, in the margins. I mean, if the U.S. government really decides it's going to, I mean, it depends on how many people are rebelling versus how many are actively engaged in the military, how serious, how
Of
badly the
course.
military wants it. And so when you add up all of these things, suggesting that having an armed population is going to guarantee success of the resistance is obviously ludicrous. And it sounds like that's the argument they're making, but I think what you're saying is that's not really the argument. The argument is it's a contributing factor, and it helps and is more likely to allow a resistance to be successful. Yes, no, maybe.
Right. Not only that, but yes, no, that is absolutely it. And any lawmaker who decides that they want to become fascistic, let's say, is going to have to. This is the argument that I've heard quite often. Is going to have to keep in their mind that this population is an armed population. If I do too much, if I go too radical, if I piss off too many people, that is something I will have to contend with.
Yeah, I think I'm gonna follow Puffalopicus here. We're cutting the feed. That's it. I'm done. I'm done. Too many people are agreeing with you. This is you just own the live chat. I apparently I have no say. We're cutting the feed. Um, so speaking of tyrannies, if I you know what, if I can't be tyrannical on my own channel, wait, are you armed? Uh-oh.
I am not armed at this
Okay.
at this moment.
Okay, that sounds suspiciously like you could get thus in a few seconds if you needed to. So I think we'll keep the feed going for now. It's just what I'm thinking.
Okay. Does airsoft count?
Sure, we'll give it to you. Okay,
All right,
well,
cool. Let's see. Does the knife that my son forged for me for Father's Day, does that count?
put that up. Put that up closer. You are back so that everyone can see you. So put that up really nice and close. That that is whom your son made that for you. I don't know whether to be impressed or scared.
Yeah. He is apprenticed to a blacksmith, and he is studying now to become a firefighter. This is the son. I know we've talked that survived cancer.
Oh yes, yes. All right. So now, let's see. Puff said, "I have something to add to this topic. It appears that alt-right and manga tees are pouncing on this shooting as further justification for a race war in clothed language." Well, Puff, why don't you, if you can send either myself or Angsgar um, any links to tweets that you find that say that, we would be very interested, I think, in seeing that. Speaking of politicizing,
for sure.
right away off the, oh.
Yeah, that doesn't surprise me at all, to be honest. There's a lot of people who are going to want to turn this into, white versus black, black versus non-black or whatever they want, which is just so dumb.
It is. There was a, I think I would like to. That's why if Mikey was still in the live chat, but no, Mikey bailed. He's too good for this. He's too good for our chat here. But we're going to have this discussion on race, and I told I told a couple stories. I can maybe save them for. Well, let me make one more significant attempt at finding this thing that I'm looking for. I will let that search. Race is an interesting topic. It's also a difficult topic to discuss for a wide variety of reasons. Yeah, I was asking about the Etsy store, if you have one.
No, he does not have an Etsy store. He does not.
It's not an easy topic to discuss, but I went to a very affluent high school.
Oh, the SWAT have safely evacuated the two officers that were in the house.
Oh, now that is how you do it. That's
nice.
This is kind of what you were saying too, and then that is true about the tone too. When they said, "Well, they had their asses handed to them," nobody knows what happened, and anything can happen when you go out there. It sounds like somebody, a third another party, attacked them when they came in. So there's no way to know how or why. So I agree that the framing of that previous tweet that we've been talking about was really kind of offensive in that sense, even if one might agree with the sentiment. But that is how professionals do it. It's nice. So they've got They
Yeah.
got him out. So ostensibly now it
No,
sounds
no
like
word on if they got the guy yet. Yeah.
um, it
No,
sounds
standoff continues. They've got them, but the standoff
yeah.
continues.
That was going to be my guess. Um,
Yeah.
all right. So I went to a reasonably affluent high school, and for the most part all white community, and
Hmm.
there was a busing program from the inner city Boston, really the gang neighborhoods into our school, and every day a bus brimming with inner city kids, all of them black students, would come to the school and be subject to our blessings of getting this marvelous education, which I do think they were being in one sense given an opportunity that obviously they couldn't otherwise have. But I don't know how you take advantage of that opportunity. I remember. There were fights in our school, but two-thirds of the fights that we had would involved one of those students from the black students, and so I remember distinctly. Oh God, I remember this like it happened yesterday. I remember one of my teachers who I had really liked said, "Well, Nick, I'm not racist." Always, whenever it starts, "I'm not racist," like
But
what's coming next. It's going to be really bad. That's just a red
yeah,
flag for I'm
yeah.
about to say something really stupid. Um, he said, "Well, I'm not racist, but I'm just pointing out that most of the fights in this school are with it was called the Medco program, so you didn't want to say a black kid. It was the Medco kids." Um, and I remember sitting
Mhm.
there saying, um, Uh, it's true, and that is how, once again, there's lies, damn lies, and statistics. That's true. But I'm sitting there going, I
Mhm.
was a freshman or sophomore in high school, and it doesn't take a lot for me to figure out that if I came, and one of these, I was friends with a number of them, and this was the first time I really encountered and realized what it was like to have two cultures in this country, that we could live in the same country and have such different lives. And one of them was talking about his brother who was in a gang, and he had been with his
Mhm.
brother on some of these activities, and he remembers the cops coming up to them and handing them weapons and saying, "These can't be traced. You're the man who
Oh
just
wow.
the guy who just killed your buddy. Yeah, his whole gang lives in that building right over there. Have a nice night." Boom, gone. And I didn't believe any of this at first, but there was verisimilitude to it. You can tell when you're hearing these kinds of things, and there's too much detail. You're sitting there going like, and they can tell the story as someone who's lived it, and it was just so hard to. And later, again, my father was a criminal defense attorney, so I'd heard stories of where the cops would say, yeah, during especially when the mafia was a problem. They just sort of, as long as they weren't taking out civilians, it was sort of like anything you can do to help them kill each other. Hey, great. And so these guys, the only people who the real problems they have are the problems back at home. And the problem of getting your
Yeah.
schoolwork in on time really is insignificant to how you're going to stay alive. And when you go to school, you get looked down on by these people who, "We're giving you this golden opportunity, and why can't you recognize how awesome we are for doing this, and why don't you appreciate us more?" And I remember coming out of the school once, and a girl I knew was sitting on the steps sobbing. She was just, "Oh, oh my God, I can't believe this happened." And her friends are all around her, and the kids are loading onto the Metco bus, and they're all kind of like, "What's wrong with that white girl?" And they're getting onto the bus, and I want to know what it is, so I'm eavesdropping,
Mhm.
which I would never do. I dropped one of my books, and it was just taking me some time to get it into my bag. And I'm trying to find out what was
Mhm.
wrong, because she was devastated, and it was one of the few times I'd ever seen someone that broken up, and they're like, "It's okay, it's okay." And she's like, the, I found out what the problem was. The problem was that she had been given the wrong color BMW for her 17th birthday. Um,
Oh
that was
God.
that was the problem.
Oh wow.
Yeah, and I remember she's literally these MECO students who are going to go back on the bus to their gang war schools, or so their gang war homes, and that's her problem. That's her biggest problem. And she was destroyed by it. And I remember saying to myself, okay, if you take me and put me in their life, and all my friends are white, and I'm in a white community that's an inner city gang neighborhood, and I'm going to these wealthy, rich black people's homes or neighborhoods, and they're gonna bestow their education on me. I'm gonna have some fucking attitude. I'm gonna have some real fucking attitude. This isn't.
Yeah.
And I'm sitting there going, if they're I'm just like, and it doesn't take, why is it as a sophomore in high school I can figure this out, but I got one of my teachers sitting there going, well, all the fights are with the black kids. Yeah, there's a reason. It's got nothing to do with the color of their skin, but
Right.
yeah. All right, so let's I
Yeah.
found a clip. Yeah, go and I'll finish loading this.
I was going to say, we've seen time and time again. This has everything to do with, crime rates have more to do with poverty than anything else.
Yep, and there's a reason that and I've heard the argument too, and I'm sure you have as well. Well, yeah, but there's more black people in poverty than whites, especially as a percentage of the population. Yeah, but there's a historical reason for that, and there seems to be this. What blows my mind is I remember when Barack Obama was elected. I worked hard to help get him elected. I was a member of the campaign, but there was no illusion in my mind that this was going to end race difficulties in this country. It was a nice step forward, but it wasn't a huge galactic thing step forward, and it was
Sure.
it was a decent sized step, and it was important, and it just had to be done. But I made no illusions that this was ending race wars in our country or anything like that, or race wars. I'm sorry, just you understand what I'm saying? Well, race, the disagreements that
Racial
are sort of,
tensions.
yes, thank you. But there are people who think it should have, and that somehow that means that everybody's back on, or back, they never were on, they are now on equal footing, as if there isn't institutionalized. I mean, every 3 or 4 years, CBS, ABC, NBC, somebody does an undercover thing where they send a white guy and a black guy with the same resume out to go apply for sometimes even the exact same job with the same company, just do it on different days, but they got the same resume. They apply at the same bank to get a loan. They apply, and even with all the other statistics the same, they get a higher interest rate if they're a person of color. They are more likely to not even get a call back, no matter how qualified they are, if they're a person of color. And then you add up all of these things when you're trying to get a car loan, a home loan, when you're trying to pay off your credit cards. It gets back to, you had mentioned earlier about this sort of bootstrap fallacy where, hey, you can, and white people, we all pulled ourselves up from our bootstraps, I'm sure, somehow. So why can't, oh God.
Well, the thing is, though, is people seem to forget too that this isn't this isn't simply. I think we may be offline. Oh no, now we're live. Okay, my broadcast just wasn't live for some reason. No, people seem to forget too that this isn't just a thing that affects specifically, black people in America or Hispanic people or any one group. You go to some of the most rural, horrible, places to live in America that are predominantly white, and you still have these same crime problems linked to poverty, and this intense poverty creates desperation and creates a sort of checking out of the system where people they don't care about these silly little things like laws when they're trying to scrape by to survive. Um, and so it's not as though we can't look at microcosms in our own country and see that this really is an actual thing. And one of the things that I really hate is people often think of America as this homogenous collective, right? Like the experiences that this person experiences over here are analogous to what everyone goes through all over the country. And growing up in California, I have lived places where walking 4 literal blocks, is like walking into a completely different world. I've lived in 2 different cities where even the way the police will treat you, the way social services are handled, everything is like a totally different world. And I know we're going to talk about that on another show at some point, but I think people get too caught up in saying this is what America is like, and they're not really paying attention to the whole story of America. You can go to I've got family in places you can go to, and it is every much I mean, it is a picture. You could take these places, and you could put them, superimpose them over the worst, most crime-ridden black neighborhoods, and they're almost identical, except the people just happen to be white. There's less of those places, but they exist.
Our resident Aussie was talking about it's the same thing with the Aborigines. He didn't say Aborigines. He said the natives there. I assume that's Aborigines, but I'm gonna now I gotta back off on pretending I know as much about Australia as I do. So and I just realized I probably put that in the wrong, of course. All right. Well, there was somebody in the live chat, and I want to capture that. But once again, I found the piece that I wanted to show, and I'm getting that up right now in the main window. I don't know if you can see the live chat. Somebody was talking about. Somebody sent me something. Discord DMs through Twitter. So let me get that in a second. First, I would like to, that actually worked surprisingly well. I'm always impressed when I'm not impressed, but I'm surprised when technology works. It's not something anyone ever really expects.
Right.
So let me put that up there. And then, that's the wrong frame. That's why we got CNN, and really nobody wants to see CNN anymore. So we've got a few questions in the live chat.
I'm sorry, it's a take that made me chuckle. Somebody said another shooting, just a quick take on Twitter that made me chuckle. Another shooting, let me guess, they're going to blame Rainbow Six Siege. It's a video game.
Oh, yes. Oh, God.
Sorry, go ahead. It's funny to me because for a while there you were really starting to hear these arguments come out of the left that it's video games, and now Trump it's video games. Come on, it's not the video games. We've already got enough studies. Shut up about the video games. Let's find another.
Yeah, there was a study on learning, people who how does stress influence learning, and people who are constantly put into a fight or flight response have their ability to learn reduced by about 80%. That's rote memory. That's any kind of you can't learn new things. You're there. All you know how to really do is survive. That's all you've got. So when you've got kids who are spending their a part of their day in these terrible situations, they're not going to uh, be able to retain facts. They're not going to be able to learn new things. They're not going to be. I mean, it's not. And this is why, again, it. You have to deal with the socioeconomic implications. It's not just about sending them to new schools. It's not just about affirmative action or any of these things, which are all well-meaning. But
For sure.
there's a lot of other difficulties that you have to deal with.
You also have to get into the subculture, because a lot of these people, through historical, how should I put it, economic segregation, a lot of these people have culturally checked out of the system. A lot of I've grown up with friends from these neighborhoods, and a lot of the parents don't value education. They don't say, they have no trust in the system. They have no trust in the authority. They have no trust in the mechanisms that guide our society. And that is a problem. You know what I mean? That is a real problem. And I'm not saying that there isn't a good reason for that problem existing, but it is a problem that needs addressing. You can throw all the opportunities in the world that direction, but if there's a cultural checking out of the system, it's not going to help.
Yep. All right. So in doing this, I found sort of one of the sources of some of the lag that I've been getting. So hopefully I'll be able to. It's going to take a little time to fix that. Oh, and I do. Before we continue much further, I would like to say that on top of just being, a spectacular co-host who, puts up with my sense of humor, puts up with me blaming it for everything, which is we are doing for people who are curious. We do have a written contract between him and myself. We are following the famed 95% principle. He's doing 95% of the work. I am taking 95% of the credit. So, but aside from being a spectacular co-host and getting all of this stuff, he did the most of the graphics that you see on this, and I just saw one of the flickering of the bar up at the top, that light that goes across, which I just love, and there's a lot of just spectacular detail that is. Oh, and I just got on my news up here too. Philadelphia, 2 officers evacuated. So it's nice to know that try as hard as I might, you've got all your news ahead of me. But that's because you're in California. I'm on the East Coast, so I'm going to get all my news later.
I'm in California, and you're honestly, you're running the stream right now, so it frees my hands up to search the news.
Yeah, well, thank you.
Thank you for the credit. I've been working hard on all these art assets, and I'm not done. I've got some more ideas and some ways, but yeah, I'm really liking the way this is all looking.
Oh yeah, me too. I think this is well, and we were still doing upgrades to this when we did this live. I mean, we weren't ready to go live yet, and we're just like, we're gluttons for punishment. Let's do it. This is what we say. This is smart. All right.
Sink or swim, man. Sink or swim.
Yeah. All right. So, people have been very good putting up with some of our difficulties. Now, my suspicion is that the audio on this is actually going to work, which would be really a shock. So I'm going to double check.
This is an interesting thing that Unvarnished just said. And I'm not sure I necessarily agree with it. We're very good friends. Police are not obligated to risk their life for you. They do not have to come to help you. How do you feel about that?
That isn't true, actually. They've taken an oath to part of the oath, and I can look it up. My guess is it's different state by state, maybe even district by district. But the oaths that I'm aware of, for the most part, they are required to. If they can exchange their lives for yours to do that. I forget how the oath is phrased, but it's pretty serious, and maybe it's been modified recently. But last I heard, they are there to protect and serve the civilian population, and that includes, but is not limited to, putting themselves in harm's way in exchange for a civilian, if possible, not just in a hostage situation, not just formally, but informally too.
Right.
Um, that's how I understand it. We can look that up, and that may be worth looking up. So this is we were talking about gun control, and you had posited an argument which I'm not sure you necessarily believe, but I do like the argument. It's probably closest to my representation of it. I think you and I have somewhat different
Mhm.
views, not that different, but certainly somewhat different. But you put
Yeah,
my
a little.
argument, I thought, very well. So I appreciate that you put my argument very well. And what I said was that I had actually the best I had ever heard it was from a TV show. Now this is that TV show, so it's up here. It's called The West Wing, and it was written by Aaron Sorkin. It's one of my favorite writers of all time. Actually,
Mhm.
just a spectacular writer, phenomenally undervalued. The West Wing, he did the first 5 seasons of that all by himself. He was the only writer on it for all intents and purposes, which just shows you amazingly how good he is. This is a segment from The West Wing. It is the beginning. It's the first episode of season 2. The show is about Steve Martin. No, Martin Sheen plays President Josiah Bartlett, President of the United States, and it's about sort of the background workings of the West Wing, which being a political wonk, I enjoyed the show. Um, in the end of the first season, he gets shot, and he is taken to a hospital. One of his chief of staff actually isn't shot, but the deputy chief of staff is also shot. A number of people get shot and injured in just this hail of gunfire. And this is the White House press briefing. Immediately after that, and this is the first episode of the second season of The West Wing, I think captures the argument beautifully. So let's play that, and hopefully people can hear it.
Secret Service agents carry a weapon called a .357 Sig Sauer. The agents on the roof shot the 2 gunmen with .726 caliber rifles that are referred to as JAR, which, believe it or not, stands for just another rifle. They're made specifically and exclusively for the Secret Service. I wanted to mention something. This is our 5th press briefing since midnight. And obviously there's one story that's going to be dominating the news around the world for the next few days, and it would be easy to think that President Bartlett, Joshua Lyman, and Stephanie Abbott were the only people who were victims of a gun crime last night. They weren't. Mark Davis and Sheila Evans of Philadelphia were killed by a gun last night. He was a biology teacher and she was a nursing student. Tina Bishop and Belinda Larkin were killed with a gun last night. They were 12. There were 36 homicides last night, 480 sexual assaults, 3,411 robberies, 3,685 aggravated assaults, all at gunpoint. And if anyone thinks those crimes could have been prevented if the victims themselves had been carrying guns, I'd only remind you that the President of the United States was shot last night while surrounded by the best trained armed guards in the history of the world. Back to the briefing.
She's good.
I always liked that clip.
Yeah.
I don't know. There's a 50-50 the sound actually played through on the. We'll find
No, it
out.
did. I'm watching. I turned on the live sound just to make sure.
Oh, all right, wonderful. All right.
Yeah.
Okay.
What would you think? Varnish had some interesting thoughts. She even said that a court ruled that officers do not have to put their life at risk to protect you. What would you think about in the future having her on an episode to talk about this particular kind of issue with her?
Sure, I think that's a good idea. So let's, if she wants to contact you on Twitter and you want to get that.
Yeah, we're friends, so
Oh, okay.
Yeah, that'll be easy.
Wait, we're gonna have a friend of yours on?
Yeah.
Oh boy. Well, I'll have to
I know.
rethink. Well, she may still be good people, I suppose. We'll see. We'll see.
I mean, to be fair, you're one of my friends, so.
Wow. I never thought of that. I may have to reevaluate some life choices. I am, and a proud one. I am, and a proud one. All joking aside. So, all right. So where do we stand on
Absolutely.
this anyway?
So still, first of all, where do we stand on the situation at the moment?
Yeah.
So it looks like everything is still the same. The last that we heard, the officers have been removed. It remains an active scene. However, let me see what the last thing the actual police said, because they've been giving some pretty good updates. 12 minutes ago, all 6 officers who have shot have been released from area hospitals. One
Really?
officer is being admitted for injuries sustained in a vehicle crash related to the incident. Some situation remains active and ongoing. So the worst injuries, strangely enough, in spite of the shooting, were from the car
From the
accident
car crash.
caused by the shooting.
Statistically speaking, there is a lot of truth in that. Actually, that is the one the gun guys have on their sides, which is cars really do. We lose 32,000 people. No, actually, now I think it's about 42,000 a year to car accidents. So basically, all right. So I think what we need to probably acknowledge at this point is that if you want to help people, you should become a police officer. But if you want to do something really dangerous, drive your kids to school.
Yeah. World's dangerous job, driving.
All right. Well, let me see. I'm going to try. It's funny. There are still some elements of this layout that are kind of in the way because we've been testing the layout. I was a little nervous about whether it would be ready tomorrow, and we weren't supposed to go till tomorrow at 2. Um, and I was ready. I was nervous about whether or not we'd get this ready by then. And now it's here we are. We're live, and
Yeah.
so it's.
Hey,
I'm
I
also
got my
cleaning
little
up the.
plastic T-Rex skull ready.
You got
So, that's what's important here.
Oh, that. Oh, I think
Yeah,
I
my
heard
little
him.
plastic T-Rex skull. See?
Nice.
Yeah, right here.
Did I tell
On
you?
my mic. Yeah.
Yep. I'll have to tell you about the a buddy of mine played a prank on Kent Hovind. He didn't mean to, but he did on April Fools. It was April 1st. On April 1st, you got to anticipate that. But on April 1st, he had a what is it? On April 1st, he published he's the head of the New Mexico Skeptics for Reason and Science, and on April 1st they found a full velociraptor fossil, the full thing. It looked
Nice.
exactly like it was out of Jurassic Park, and it was like, and it had its jaws around the legs of a hominid. Just a like a caveman who was sitting there going, ah, and it's the full fossil of him too. So it's a fully fossilized human being in this pose with a velociraptor clinching onto his leg. And again, key is the date they found it, April 1st.
Right.
So they published this, and Mr. Hovind finds it and puts out the bat signal, tells everybody that's it, evolution's over. We've got a velociraptor with its teeth on a person. We know for a fact now dinosaurs and human beings lived together, and he just did he did this. He sent this out to 500,000 people, and
What a
about
freaking joke.
about let's see, about what is it? 2 weeks later, he actually calls up my friend and says, I'm going to sue you for fraud. So I believe that you didn't really find this thing. And he's just like, I didn't find it. I recanted on April 2nd. It's like it wasn't fraud. It was an April Fool's Day prank. I was like, well, you made me look terrible. It's like, nobody told you to retweet. We weren't doing this for you. We just put it out on the head of New Mexicans for Science and Reason. And, Hovind was pissed. He was really
Oh,
mad.
that's hilarious. Oh, man.
Yeah. So,
Oh, that made my night right there. That is absolutely hilarious.
Yeah. So, I'm
Holy
thrilled
crap! That tweet
yes. What?
up to 3,000. Up to that tweet up to 3,000 retweets. 10,000 over 10,000 likes.
Oh, God.
Yeah.
So is this likely to
Wow.
spur another round of police militarization across the country? I doubt it. It's curious. So Puffalopicus asked if this is going to likely spur a round of police militarization across the country. That's an interesting. It is when people talk about gun control. The straw man that people hit me with all the time is, well, gee, Nick, you're not against guns. You're just against certain people having guns. You don't mind the police having guns. I do mind the police having guns. I put up with it because they have to. We arm our criminals and we arm our clinically insane, so we have to arm the police. So we don't really have a choice in the matter. But in England, the police are not armed. The police don't have a gun. So in the immortal words of Robin Williams, what they do is they say, stop, or I'll say stop again. I think that's how I'd like American police to be. And by the way, I think there's a huge percentage of the black population that agrees with me. Arming the police probably is not a good idea as a general rule of thumb. You have to do that in the United States. You don't have a choice. That doesn't answer Puff's question. It's just sort of a setup to it. The question, will this, there are people who want to arm them more, and I sometimes am sympathetic to that. I don't think this is going to necessarily be used that way, although some people will try to shoehorn it into that. But especially whereas it doesn't strike me that this guy was more heavily armed than most people. It doesn't strike me that he was armed beyond the capacity of SWAT. It strikes me that this was just a situation that people didn't see coming right away. And that always happens. You can't protect against that. Right. And having more, you give every member of SWAT a howitzer, and that's not going to stop surprises from happening. So I don't think any reasonable person is going to make that argument in this case. I think there are people dying to make that argument at the next possible chance, but I don't think this is going to be utilized that way.
Yeah, here's the thing. I have a huge problem with the militarization of police. I'm not a disarm the police guy, but I do think that the police have become militarized, both in the way they train, the way they're armed. They have, armored personnel carriers. They've got, there are podunk towns with, a population of I'm way exaggerating, but 8 people, and the officers there have a armored personnel carrier. And it's like, what the hell do you need this for?
Well, they do that. They do that for the, how the police have those things where they have the public can show up and ride in the police cars and sit in the back and stuff like that. They have that for the kids,
Go, yeah.
They're like, okay, kids, now this is in case you have to occupy a small, South American country. This is what we use.
I like it. But yeah, that gets pretty freaking ridiculous. And so I'm not I'm definitely not a fan of the militarization. I think one of the biggest places where this militarization really comes forward is in the and I'm sorry about the noise outside. That's my neighbors. They're going crazy right now for some reason. But yes,
I'd say go over there and knock, but they may put a cap in your ass. So just don't knock. If you're like, be quiet, you never know. They'll just shoot you through the door.
These neighbors are terrible. They are very conservative Muslim, and we do have other Muslim neighbors that we get along with fantastic, but these ones absolutely hate us. Their kids will commonly throw things at our windows. Every time my wife is seen by them, they yell, horrible obscenities at her. One of the male members of the family has threatened sexual assault on her. They are absolutely horrible. Yeah, they're bad. And then right in the same building, this is what I'm talking about, like multiculturalism, man. Right in the same building, there are Islamic neighbors who are just some of the most beautiful, wonderful people you could ever know. They're sweet, they're kind, they're generous. They say hello in the morning, and so people, man. Some people just suck.
Yep. All right. So this is the other thing. So we had talked repeatedly about having a producer, and I think there are any number of reasons. To tell you the truth, I've been kind of enjoying this because I do like doing technical stuff, but I can't function as well. You can't function. I mean, nobody, you can't multi-process, and I'd like to have. We've both seen shows that have one of the hosts producing, and you can't be 100% that way. You can be 80% that way if you're really good at it. I'm not there yet, but people who have experience doing it can, and that's one reason why I try to stay out of the live chats too, because I'm not being my best when I'm paying attention to the live chat.
Right.
But so we've been thinking about getting a producer, but there's another reason too, which is at some point, because it is about 10:30 here on the East Coast, and I do need to get up early with my kids tomorrow. So at some point I'm going to need to leave, and it's not necessarily right away, but that's something that's coming up on the horizon. And if we had a producer, especially one in California, who could stick around for another 3 hours with you, that would be ideal. But and again, that's not necessarily now, but I do see that up in the horizon. So we'll have to.
Yeah.
I don't know what we'll do. I do have a dog. We could put him in here. Who knows? Maybe.
Excellent.
Yeah, I know what you're thinking. You're sitting there going, well, the conversation will get a little better. We'll put my dog in the seat. And,
I mean, it's got to improve the scenery, right?
Oh, yeah, thanks. Yeah. What was that? Somebody had said, if they've done that poll. What is it? If the following three are president, no, the following three are on Jeopardy, which one wins? A cat? No, sorry, it was a monkey, Donald Trump, or a bubblegum wrapper.
Okay.
Yeah, and the answer was the bubblegum wrapper, because no, you know what? I think it was the monkey. I don't remember. The last was Trump, and the reason is because the bubblegum wrapper at least isn't going to get any questions wrong, so it's going to be at a 0. The monkey isn't going to get any right, but it's just going to keep hitting the buzzer and buzzing in, but it's not going to bet anything either. Trump is going to bet absolutely everything, take a stab at every single answer, and get all of them wrong, and then get pissed off and say, no, you're wrong, and fake news. So he's going to be the only one in the negative. So basically, it's going to be a tie between the monkey and the bubblegum wrapper. Just saying. So maybe a dog could do my job. I don't know.
The math holds up.
Yeah, exactly. We've done an official study. Well, no, I think I think what I'm going to do is in 2 or 3 minutes, I'm going to take a stab at really getting our calendar, and anybody who has for some form of glutton for punishment has stuck with us all the way through this entire thing up till now, cover what our schedule is, because we are actually scheduled pretty well out for the next month. And cover what the tentative schedule is, and our first show, what's supposed to be our first scheduled show is tomorrow, 2 p.m. Eastern Standard Time on, I know we mentioned this earlier, but it is on cancel culture and sort of outrage culture. And
Right.
Yep. So that's going to be our first show, and then on um, really there are I think 2 regularly scheduled broadcast days a week, but there are sometimes when we're going to have a third. The Thursday shows are for sort of big topics, uh, talking about culture, politics, big stuff like that. The Tuesday shows usually they're still going to be big topics, but we're going to try to have on a guest uh, for those Thursday
Yeah,
shows.
particularly shows where we don't feel like our expertise is enough to cover the topic properly.
And that's sort of what, yeah, I think that's thank you for interjecting that, because I think that's important. So there are topics that we would like to discuss where I'm just like, well, Ansgar, you're gonna have to carry this one because I don't know what I'm doing. He's like, oh shit, I was kind of expecting you to carry that one, Nick. I was like, this boat's gonna sink fast unless we find somebody to make us look like we know what we're doing. So we're gonna um, have yeah. So we just sit there and say, okay, that's going to be a Tuesday topic, and the Tuesday topics are going to be the topics that we really want to discuss, just as much as any Thursday topic. But really, we need to have an expert in there to an expert, somebody who knows more about it than we do. When are you going to have the lawyer on? That's a pet project of mine. I am planning on bringing a lawyer on to discuss some legal topics regarding a legal issue that's been brought up on Twitter a lot. I have my own personal legal opinions. They are layman opinions, but they are an educated layman opinion. And in fact, I've frankly already discussed it with a lot of lawyers, and I keep getting the same answer, which is the opinion that I have. And it's probably because, again, my father was a criminal defense attorney. This, I was really pretty close into an understanding of how this stuff works. And I teach law, and there's also a difference between teaching it and practicing it. There's some very important differences, but 6 lawyers in my family, I speak to all of them, not all of them every day, but I speak to at least one of them any given day. You know what I'm saying. But more importantly,
Yes.
I've spoken to lawyers and said, look, this is my take on it. What do you think? And in general, not in general, universally so far. In fact, I've been on live streams and I've said, okay, I have a challenge. Is there a lawyer here who disagrees with my opinion on this topic? And I haven't found a single one that has. But doing those kind of straw and informal, I want to have a lawyer to discuss a reasonably salient topic on Twitter. Most people can probably guess what it is if they know anything about me, but nonetheless, I will wait until we actually get that lawyer. I've reached out to a couple of lawyers who are experts in social media and who in fact often do broadcast on social media and podcasts and stuff like that to see if they would be willing to be guests. I have not heard back from either of them. If both of them say no, I will cast my net out further. But that would probably be a Wednesday show. And then Wednesday is the third class of day. And the Wednesdays are for smaller topics. In some ways, it's a nice, interesting topic because I think we are going to be discussing law and we're going to be discussing larger issues, but it's about a very specific issue that affects a smaller subset of people. This isn't one of the big ones that we would normally discuss on Thursdays or Tuesdays. So for our schedule right now, as it stands, outrage and cancel culture on Thursday. The effects of social media on politics and culture, and Cheshire Vic is going to be our guest, and she was pleased to learn about that in our live chat.
She's like, I knew I was going to be on, but I didn't know the topic. But I think she even said, to be fair, I didn't ask.
Well, the problem is I like to look smarter than our guests, and that's very hard to do when they know the topic ahead of time. Right. We're going to be discussing an interesting one, and I'd like to have Ansgar actually explain this one better once I'm done sort of going over those. So what we'll do is I'll finish the schedule, then we'll quickly check in and see if there's any updates, and if there isn't, Ansgar will explain this particular one. But this is going to be on superheroes, and the title is just superheroes. It's much more than just superheroes. This is I should probably actually fill out that description a bit more. There are a few that I like having a small. And actually, I do think we've got, but that one is that deserves more in the title anyway. So I'm going to update that one tomorrow. Then the next Tuesday, it's racism and tribalism in modern culture. Since we are both, last I checked, middle age or maybe older, Ansgar, white men. Yeah, I know. I got a lot.
I'm still 20s. It's 20 in here. Yeah.
Well, yeah, but I got a lot more gray than you do. But we'll pretend.
It's true.
We'll pretend. I'm gonna get like hair dye.
Fills out the
man. So
that's what it is.
Since I don't think either of us are going to necessarily be I don't think either of us are going to be qualified to really. It's going to be a one-sided conversation if we do that one. So we do have someone in mind for that, but I think we'll wait and see if I can get a hold of him and get him on before we do that. And that's on the 27th, Tuesday the 27th. On the 29th, ostensibly gun control, where we're going to be talking about a lot of the stuff that we've already sort of previewed. Unfortunately, I'm sorry to say, tonight. Then. Let me get the calendar to load up the next day, and then I suppose while it does that, the other point I could make is that the other thing that we do plan on doing is covering any breaking news. Now, this was a reasonable sized breaking news story, and I think we're going to have to decide what bar, because the two of us have to find a way to make ourselves available. We've got family, we've got other commitments, so I think it is going to be based on the news story. But I think one thing we'd like to do is to be able to have a place where people can come and get the news and get it where we have where we can aggregate the news sources. We can try to filter out what's going on social media, what's actually happening versus what can be confirmed to be said to be happening, and have commentary, take user or chat room questions and sort of aggregate that all into a single show that hopefully our users find useful. And we will be doing that live when there is breaking news. That is, again, it's going to have to be a reasonably sufficient national urgency, because it's difficult for us to necessarily attend. But that is one thing too that we are going to be doing on this show. So there's this schedule, and then there's what happens on a Saturday when there's a national event. And you will ostensibly, you should find us here broadcasting and discussing it. So on September the 3rd, that's a Tuesday, we will be discussing polyamory and the death of modern marriage, and sort of the ethics and the practical and practical and ethical, I suppose, implications of polyamory, open marriages, and stuff like that. I don't know if I think polygamy may end up coming up, but I think that's also going to be a separate topic. That Thursday, the state of healthcare in the United States, that will be Thursday the 5th. On Tuesday the 10th, we're looking to do the attack on the sciences. We have a very special guest in mind for that. We don't know if we can get him yet, but it's sort of the anti-science culture in the U.S. You see a lot of that in other places too, but nowhere. The U.S., we're cutting edge when it comes to denying science.
We really are.
We are. Thursday the 12th, the media oligarchy, the consolidation of basically all media into 3 super conglomerates, and what that does for our ability to get unbiased information, which there's probably no such thing, but as close to unbiased as possible. What happens when you consolidate all media into roughly 3 major media conglomerates,
including the way we communicate publicly. Mind you, they're practically operating as our communication utilities.
Yes, in fact, for the most part, almost all media organizations are I think it's becoming pretty Machiavellian, with the exception of Google and its subsidiary property YouTube. I think that YouTube is a marvelous organization, and uh, I think that they would never demonetize or kick anyone off their channel without really good cause, and I stand behind them ethically as an organization. Ansgar, keep a hold of yourself. If you have to look away from, just close the monitor while I finish this. And we would never do anything to slight our parent networking company. And Ansgar agrees. Okay. Uh-oh, I think I'm in trouble when this stream ends. Okay. Yeah, we're gonna cover, and we're gonna cover all of it. The media oligarchy.
Yeah.
That's Thursday the 12th. Hedonism. That's the topic of Thursday the 17th, and that's one that's a single word title. That just hedonism says it all. That's going to be the 17th.
Yes.
Tone policing is the title. I don't really like this, but we're going to be discussing. It's not that different from. I think it's a different take from tomorrow's topic. It's in some ways it's the same topic, but from a different angle. Those media outrage and or the cancellation. But I think we're gonna do it from a less of a global tact and a bit more of a sort of personal. How do people sit here and use cries of tone policing or something else to try to ignore or mitigate criticism?
Right.
And we have some specific examples for that. We're still fleshing that one out. That's more than a month away, so some of these are still. This is all tentative, but we've got stuff planned. We have another interview planned for the 24th. We may not have. No, and I think that's actually all we have for our specific plans. And actually, I don't see anything new. So unless something's come up, I would like to have Ansgar explain the topic that is a week from tomorrow.
The one about superheroes, right?
Yes.
Okay, so this is actually a topic I think that you and I are, you being a philosopher and me being someone who is a fan of philosophy, but also very much into comics. There's an entire generation of children, well, now adults, that were raised with comics and superheroes, and we're going to be discussing the role that those mediums had in educating on things like normative ethics and some of the more basic moral philosophies that were contained within those mediums. And I think that there is an entire generation of people that have been educated in some of the most basic of normative ethics and moral philosophy just by consuming superhero media.
Well,
so that's what we'll be discussing.
And I think that it also, there's a couple of questions that I'm interested in too, which is what drives what? I mean, is why are we interested in these superheroes? What makes them a superhero, and how? What about religious superheroes? You know,
Right.
Where do we get some of our beliefs in religion? And I don't mean to be flippant when I say religious superheroes, like, you know, Jesus Christ as a superhero. But what I do mean, there are some in specifically in Hinduism. There is a bit more. I forget what his name is, the Blue Archer, but it is sort of this very heroic figure. We don't think of Jesus Christ as a hero, although I think some Christians would see him that way. Others would see that as a almost a
well, yeah,
not diminutive, but it's certainly he's more than a, you know, to call him a hero would be. But anyways, I think And I don't think that's going to be the central topic, but I think in my mind that's also part
No.
of, you know,
Superheroes really are our modern day mythology, for sure.
yeah. So that's how you would put it
You
that
know,
way earlier,
that's
which I really liked, the superheroes as modern day mythology. I'm going to update the superheroes as modern day mythology. I think that was how you had framed it earlier that I really liked. So I'm going to write it down
all
here
right.
so I can forget to update the calendar and make sure I don't put it in. And there goes my Twitter. So give me 1
And
second.
there goes your 1,000.
Oh, Jesus. It's going to be one of those days, huh? Well, so here's the thing I do too, which is I take like this is like an iPhone 3. Um,
Mm-hmm.
I mean that's what this is an iPhone 6. This is the iPhone 3, and for the most part I don't get rid of old
I'm
technologies.
just
Yeah?
discovering the problem. iPhone.
Yeah. I'm running Streamlabs off of my iPhone 3. I don't know why, but it's lagging like crazy.
I'm just saying, why buy twice twice the hardware for half the price when you can get a little Apple on the back of your phone telling everybody what a status symbol you own.
Yeah. Um, so
Yeah, I got the Samsung.
oh, nice. I did for the longest time because I jailbreak all my devices, and it's much easier to jailbreak or to root a Droid than it is to really um,
Sure.
do it on an Apple. But I mean, an Apple isn't, in my mind, worthwhile unless you've rooted it. It's the lock they have on it makes it so much harder to do anything worthwhile. But I ended up with a Galaxy, I think 5 when it was high end, by the way. Um, and the Galaxy 5 had a couple of problems, not the least of which is the proximity sensor went off at 2 feet. So if I held it close enough to my face, the whole screen would go black because it would think I'm holding it up to my ear, and it would go black so that you have a proximity sensor so that when you hold it to your face, but there was no way to change it. It had two positions, 2 feet or closer or further away than 2 feet. That was the only two positions that the proximity sensor could detect. And that and a couple other just little problems that made my life. And so I never went back to the Samsung. I would much prefer that over an Apple product. But I've got these. I've got one is just sitting on my monitor here, permanently plugged in, and it just shows me the current status of a couple of different websites that I own, and I just that way, if one of them is down, I see it, and I just see this little graph, and the graph is flatlined. I was like, oh, it's down, and then the other one just vibrates whenever I have a tweet. That's how I'm sitting here testing this thing earlier today. I was like, oh, we're going to test this, and we're trying to get it out the door so we're ready, which I've lost a couple hours of getting ready to doing this stream. But I was like, we're gonna try to be ready. I'm testing this thing, and I literally see on the CNN blast right in the middle there, it pops up and shows 6 shot. And I was just like, oh God, do I tell Ansgar, are we really going to do this now? Or are we going to wait like we should? No, we're going to go.
No, man, jump in, feet first.
Yep. So
just go for it.
Yep. I think somebody is making fun of my iPhone in the live chat. That's what I think.
Yes, and rightfully so.
What? Excuse me? Nobody gets me. Nobody gets me. All right. I do think
well,
there may be a benefit to actually having different browsers. I usually use Chrome, but if I actually, well, no, I have an old laptop here, and the purpose of the laptop was to have the live chats or the live stream, the back end on YouTube of the live stream here, so that it's not taking up CPU cycles on my main machine, and then I can have one window that's always open that's just got the back end, and all that other good stuff. But hey, we didn't have
Oh,
time to set that up.
jeez. Okay, so here's a picture. This is actually kind of I don't know what kind of social commentary this is, but this is social commentary. So you can see the active police line, right? You can see the place that where the police are watching.
Yep.
And there's a lady with a bunch of snacks on her head, obviously going around selling snacks to all the people watching the active shooting.
Whoa.
That is just so.
Oh, you need to screen share that. You need to get that out. That's insane.
Okay, hold on. Let me. Is it easy for you to get it up on the screen? I'm just curious. Otherwise, I can just screen share.
Yeah, it's probably harder for you to send it to me again, especially the way this is set up right now, because it just wasn't set to do this today.
Okay.
It's probably easier for you to.
All right. Let me see what I can do here. And share screen, and here we go.
Oh my God.
She's got her little fanny pack for the money. She's got her snacks.
Yeah, she does. She's got a little, and she's all proud of this too. She's doing the peace sign. She's like, okay, this is, wow. And she's got some good snacks.
I don't know
there.
what
M&Ms. Wait, I want to know where she didn't. I hope the neighborhood's not so bad that she already had this stuff just waiting around, because she's like, oh, there's gonna be a shooting at some point. I'm just gonna, when there is.
This is my active shooting survival kit.
Yeah, I'm gonna make some money off of it.
Yeah, but I don't know if this is a commentary on capitalism or if this is a commentary on just how numb we are to shootings, or I don't know what this is a commentary on, but god damn it, this is a commentary of some kind.
Yeah. Whether it's a deliberate commentary or not, it's wow. At least she's owning it. You know what I mean?
Yes.
She's just, I'm gonna work this. Baby.
Yeah, totally.
I'm gonna own this.
I mean, or it could also be a commentary on when you're poor, you don't have time to give a crap about everything else. You got to make some money.
Oh wow. Well, we're probably just we're probably just reading too much into it. She's just like, girl, I just had this. I work at a store. We had this on. I was like, I'm gonna go make some money now. I got 2 kids to feed.
Yeah. Wow. But I would say, even if it's unintentional, that there's commentary in that photo. I love this photo. I unironically absolutely love this photo.
We should keep a scrapbook of photos.
We should.
And I think that first one is definitely gonna go on there, probably, especially after it's settled down a little bit. Maybe we can put that up. But this one also definitely belongs there.
Yeah, for sure.
We'll keep a scrapbook. Wow.
I love it.
Can maybe put it in the feed too. We're not, or in the one of the info boxes down there.
Yeah.
I think for most of our regular shows, we're not going to be doing news. We're going to do whatever those topics are. So, I've said this before. I'll say it again for people who aren't bored enough that they want to shoot me in the live chat there. But this is. I think we've got the scheduled shows and we've got the breaking news, and we just decided to go with the breaking news a day early, really before we were ready to go live. We were in the process of testing the layout. We were literally in the process. The way I found out about the news story was I was testing the layout, and the CNN ticker right in the middle of just poof, breaking news. I was just like, no, it didn't do that. It did. There's something wrong with this. It's broken. Control Alt Delete. Control Alt Delete. No, it's real.
Yeah.
So, but no, I think overall, a little bit by bit, we got the live chat up. We stopped using copyrighted images and music. That's good. I'm not a businessman, but I think you want to try not to use copyrighted images. I think that there's something in the YouTube
I hear that
user. Yeah, that's what I've heard, but who knows? It's I you see, here's the thing. I'm a philosopher. I'm a professional at this. I do not fall to like fallacies like the bandwagon effect or ad populism, just because people say it's illegal doesn't mean
Argument from authority.
exactly. Exactly. Ooh, the lawyers say you can get demonetized for it. Okay. Yeah, fine, fine.
Hey, one
Uh,
person dislikes what we do. Look at that. Nice.
we got a dislike.
We got one dislike,
We got one
25
dislike.
likes.
Oh well.
One dislike.
Can you
One
please?
person dislikes us.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, we're gonna have a ticker. I don't know what the ticker is gonna be. We had one in that was just gonna be the patrons, but right now I have only one patron, so I was just like it's just gonna be his name going across the. I was like, but we should have a ticker either of the news. I mean, I think we can have different tickers for different situations too. I don't think we would want a live news ticker. I think we would want a live news ticker during this, although there is something to be said for. There was one thing against doing a live news ticker while we're in a live news, and we're supposed to have a different background for this. This is our background for the main shows. Um, and I also like the fact that we're going to have a different background for different for the um, shows that are breaking news, because that way too you can just by looking at the thumbnail, if you're interested in seeing one of the regular shows, it's going to have one of the regular backgrounds. If you see a red background, it's one of the breaking news shows. Um, but we were testing different red backgrounds, and I remember saying to myself, okay, you're going live, you can't use this one that you're testing, and of course it still stayed up there and went in, and it was the audio whatever. Um, so it was just one of the test ones we're doing. This is what it's going to look like in our normal shows now. For the live shows, or not the live, for the breaking news shows, I like the idea of having a news ticker down on the bottom, but I dislike it slightly because that means we lose control over what goes out on the feed. So
Right.
if we're talking about a hostage situation at a school and we're all sitting here wondering what's going on, and then all of a sudden gunman just wipes out the whole school and kills himself, and that comes across the crawl on the ticker before Ansgar or I know about it, and we can't frame it right, we can't prepare the audience, we can't, it's just all of a sudden out there. uh, I would have a bit of a problem with that. I think 9 times out of 10 it's a great idea to have that ticker out there. I like the idea of that way. If in the unlikely event you're getting bored with what one of us is saying, you can just go look at the ticker and you can see it. And we do have the refreshing CNN webpage down there, so we're already pretty close to doing that. So I don't know. I think Ansgar and I are going to have that discussion, and we're not necessarily going to, end it here or there. And I do think a scroll of the patrons or supporters would also be a very good idea, because I think we're just starting out, so there aren't many, but I think they're going to be very important to us and to this show. And would be, I kind of feel like it's a privilege to be able to say these are the people who are supporting us and we appreciate them. So we may have that as a scroll too. So I think we're going to have something, but what it's going to be and under what circumstances, I don't think we've decided yet.
So I don't think we're going to get any more updates anytime soon. It sounds, I'm not seeing any more updates come through. Now it's just a whole lot of people talking about, what we need to do in the future and, that kind of thing.
I think that's the case. I think we need to, so we can start to wrap this up. I need to go get my checks from a couple of sort of those left-wing groups. You need to get your checks from the NRA. Our various sponsors,
right.
Corporate sponsors. We each have. See, the real, what we've actually done on this show. Here's what it is, which is we've each gotten corporate sponsors, and they're just competing corporate sponsors. So we get paid whichever side we land on. It's just one of us gets the, So if one of these days I want to say a joke like that, and I gotta be a little. I have a very dry sense of humor. Mikey's a friend of mine, and he was talking about. He's just like, once you get my sense of humor, you know, you can tell right off the bat when I'm joking. Usually it's when I suddenly start to get very serious, like, he's gonna say he's gonna tell a joke. That's what.
Yeah.
So but people who don't get it, they say, "Oh my God, he just said that." I was like, "No, it was a joke. No, 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 you were serious." It's called a dry wit. It's called a very dry wit.
Right.
It's called
Right.
unnecessarily dry. It's called dry to the point of being really stupid. Um, so I gotta be a little careful with the jokes, but. No, actually, I think that this is a reasonably successful test. I've figured out some parts of the interface that I thought would work well and didn't. I got other parts of the interface
Mhm.
working better, and I also know now how to identify problems a little faster. And hopefully next time we won't be doing it under quite as much pressure, and we can test it another hour before we actually go live.
Yeah.
But
Well, why don't we end the stream here, because I don't think there's much else going to be going on, and why don't you and I talk a little bit, behind the scenes, and go from there.
all right, well, let me oh yeah, I closed the control box, and of course the other thing is, yeah, it was all right. Oh, who's giving you a hard time now?
Someone's giving me a hard time. I'm chuckling at you.
Oh,
You
okay.
know?
Well, so here's the thing. So we've got the where the stream outro was being revamped also. So we don't actually have a stream outro. All we have is this the stream intro. So I'm probably just gonna bail into the stream intro. Um, so we'll go into that and give it
Are
a
you
minute.
sure our outro tonight shouldn't just be, "Hey, goodbye"?
Well, at a minimum, listen, if it's that, it'll be more legal than our intro was. But
Audio jungle.
yeah, Audio Jungle, that was it. Yeah. Oh, good. Good.
Professionalism.
Yeah. Oh, God.
That's us.
It's us. Yep, exactly. All right. Well, thank you all very much for coming in on our first night. I think that it was an interesting night, and I think it was a good decent story to start with. I look forward to see you guys on our scheduled show tomorrow, 2 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, and it's going to be the cancel and outrage culture. And I look forward to seeing you guys then. So thank you all very much, and I will see you soon.
Bye-bye.
Oh, I guess graphics are 95% of why people show up. All right, let me call you back in a minute.
All right, go ahead.
All right, bye.
Bye.